Okay, y'all can see that, right? So you'll let them in. I'm gonna let them in. Good morning, good morning. Happy New Year. We will start promptly at 9:30. I am going to put the attendance sheet in the link so you can fill it out ahead of time. And
Good
please
morning,
put your
everyone.
good morning, Veronica. And put your districts in front of your name, district or borough. And I'm putting the attendance sheet, the attendance form in the chat. And we are live on YouTube. And so those members are here. Please put your districts in front so we all know who's present. We have 11 minus 1 is 10. So we have quorum. Okay, it's 9:30. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday break. We're going to start the meeting. Welcome back and Happy New Year.
Please put your district in front of your name, please.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and try again. I think this froze. There we go. So today is our first meeting for the new year of 2023. The Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council. It's Thursday. Meeting has been called to order. This is our current executive board. Again, we're going to wish everyone a happy new year. And we are at the midpoint of our school year. We're going to have some conversations for our expectations for the rest of the school year. On the screen is our CPAC meeting procedures and standing rules. We'll leave it on there for a minute. Everyone has this.
Recording in progress.
So a summary of those rules is please wait to be recognized by using your hands function, putting it in the chat, or physically raise your hands, but be mindful, can't see the entire screen. So if you are able to use the hands function or put it in the chat that you would like to speak. Remember, members, we have 38 members. So 2 minutes or less for your question or comment. Please, again, don't unmute yourself. There's someone from the board will let me know if I'm not seeing you to recognize you. We're gonna ask not to ask follow-up questions. If you wanna ask additional questions or additional comments, just raise your hands again so we can be respectful where everyone who wishes to speak can speak. So we're gonna do roll call and we're gonna remind everyone again, please put your district or borough in front of your name so everyone can see clearly who you are prior to. So we're gonna start with roll call. We're gonna go in order. District 1. District 2.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Leonard. Happy New Year.
Nice to see you too. Good morning.
Good morning. District 3. I know
Good
Jimmy's
morning,
here.
everyone.
District 4. So
Good
we have a
morning.
Lisa.
I'm here.
I see Lisa. Could you put your district in front of your name, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I don't think I know how to do that. Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am. Just tell me your district and your last name and we'll fix it.
District 31 and Augustine, is the last name.
Augustine, thank you. So I'll do it
Thanks.
after roll call. District 5. District 5. Okay. District 6. Okay. District 7, I saw you.
I'm present. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year.
Good
Oh,
morning, Ms.
good
Keeper.
morning, Shirley. Luis Camilo, District 6.
Thank you. Good morning, Luis. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
District 8.
Good morning.
Good morning, Angela. Happy New Year. District 9. District 9. District 10. I thought I saw Maria.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Maria Villalobos, District 10.
Good morning. Happy New Year. District 11. Okay, we just hold on. District 12. District 13. District 14. District 14. District 15. 15. District 16. 16. District 17. So Veronica.
I'm here,
Happy New
thank
Year,
you.
Veronica.
The same to
District
you, darling.
18. District 18. District 18. Okay. District 19. 19. District 20. Oh, I see 14 is here. District 14. District 20.
Present.
No, 20. 21, we know Randy is here.
Good morning, everyone.
District 22.
Good morning, everyone. Present.
Good morning, Lydia. District 23.
Good morning. This is Madam Hardy.
Madam Hardy,
Yes.
good morning. Happy New
Good
Year.
morning. Happy New Year, everyone.
District 24. Okay. District 25.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I was trying to unmute. I'm here. District 24 is here.
Happy New Year,
Good morning,
Maddie.
everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's
Good
okay.
morning.
It's okay. Okay, Francis said she might be running late. Okay, so that's 25. Now here, 26.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Kathy. 27.
Good morning, District 27, Melissa McAllister, present.
Good morning. Happy New Year, Melissa. 28. I saw Adriana.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Shirley.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
29. I think I saw her.
Good morning.
Joanne.
Happy New Year. Joanne Cummings, District 29.
Good morning. Happy New Year. District 30.
District 30 here.
Good morning. Happy New
Morning.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Becca. 31. District
Hi,
31.
good morning, here.
All right, Lisa. Oh, see, somebody fixed your day for you.
Yeah, and I figured it out now, so next month we won't have a problem.
Awesome. Nice to see you. Good morning. 32. District 32. Is Jazzy here? 32. Okay. I saw Andrea, District 75.
President, good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bronx High School. I saw Rima.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Brooklyn. Is Lakeisha here? Brooklyn? Okay. I believe I saw Manhattan High Schools. Rosa?
Yes, good morning. I'm here, Rosa Diaz.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Queens is present. That's myself. Staten Island.
Good morning, Melissa Gurchia, Staten Island High School.
Good morning, Melissa. Happy New Year. So for those who we skipped, but even though we did roll call, I know Randy put it in the chat. Please still fill out the attendance form for our records. So this is our agenda. We had a switch in the agenda at 10 o'clock and 10:30 is the switch. We're going to hear from Sharon Rencher first regarding the DCE template. And then it's going to be followed by FACE. And then at 10:30, it will be DC Quintana of Learning and Teaching. And then we were supposed to have Rita Joseph, but she asked to postpone to next month. And instead, we'll have Nan Mead proposal to create a commission to study and replace the foundation aid. So we're going to have a conversation on that. So we're going to take care of our business. And the first order of business is reviewing the November 10th minutes. Everyone was sent November and December. Just take time to review it real quick. And then when you are ready to someone please make a motion to adopt the minutes, or if you have any questions or concerns.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes for November.
Okay, that was District 3. Anyone would like to second that?
District 28
I would like
seconds.
to second it.
Okay, so we're going to take 28, and whoever else was speaking can do the next month. All right, anyone who opposes or abstaining in adopting the minutes, please do so at this time. I don't see any opposition. Okay, so our November minutes are adopted. Now we're going to go into our December minutes. Okay, Andrea.
I just wanted to make a motion to adopt the minutes for December 2022.
Awesome, thank you. And who would like to second that motion?
I would like to second the motion.
Manhattan High Schools, thank you. So anyone at this time opposes that we adopt the December minutes? Or have any questions or concerns, or would like to abstain from adopting? Okay, our December minutes are adopted. Thank you, everyone. We have one more order of business. The high school committee sent a proposition letter to the chancellor and Deputy Chancellor Lloyd in regards to adult website to update, to improve, to have support letters for our adult educators. It's on the screen. It was sent ahead of time. Take a time to review the resolution or proposition letter. And if you have any questions or concerns, please, this is the time. And when someone else is ready, motion to adopt. Someone speaking. December, okay, District 23, you're coming in choppy. Are you making a motion to adopt the resolution? Can you put it in the chat? Oh, I thought it was 23. Is it me that is coming over choppy? Everybody sound computerized.
My apologies. My apologies.
I hear it the same.
Yes. It's District 23. Yes, we
Okay,
make a
so
motion. I make a motion.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, 23. And anyone who would like to second that?
I'll second it.
Second.
District 3.
Okay, besides District 3, someone, okay, you know what? We're gonna follow protocol.
I'll
Leonard,
second it.
Leonard, you have your hands up?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Leonard. Okay. So at this time, it is the new year. I hope that we had if you had your President's Council, because this meeting already is still near the beginning of the month, reflection. We would just like to, reminders as you begin the actual physically new school year, but we're at the new year, calendar year, but we are at the midpoint of the school year. And we just would like to remind President's Council to have a reflection with your membership, to get a pulse on how the schools that you are charged with to support. President's Councils was created or structured to support PAPTAs. That is their main function. All the other stuff is additional. That you are to support your PAPTAs, create a safe space to hear their needs and concerns, and then address them. And as President's Council, our support to help us support our schools is the Family Leadership Coordinator, the Family Support Coordinator. Together, you are to support your PAPTAs. It is the role and responsibility of the president to help develop parent leaders. That means, if it means training, professional development, one-on-ones, that is the role of President's Council, to develop and develop parent leaders. You can do this in conjunction with your Family Leadership Coordinator, who's supposed to provide training for parents at the district or borough level at the same time. So you could create a partnership to do that, so you can support our PAPTAs. There's a lot of talk about all our PAPTAs are not up and running. I think that will vary from borough to borough, district to district. So, but we just want to remind our members, CPAC supports PAPTA indirectly. We support them through us, President's Council. We're a President's Council, and we are charged to support our PAPTAs. And there are means to structures in place to have partnership with our Family Leadership Coordinator or Family Support Coordinator. I know that everybody don't have FSCs, but you at least have one or the other. Most of us do have both. Develop those partnerships and stress upon them that we need to support our PAPTAs. And the only way you can do that is to ask them, honestly. There's, of course, we're gonna go over PAPTA, what I call 101, but there are other needs and more delicate situations that need to be addressed. And through either our meetings, our monthly meetings, or our committees, or special meetings, you need to create a safe space for the PTA presidents to discuss their concerns on individual, what's going on in their schools and what they need support to do. And at the school level, we have our parent coordinators, and I know not every school has a parent coordinator, and the DOE is working on that, but that's the support. And as PTA presidents, again, our job is to develop, one of our roles and responsibilities is to develop parent leadership development. So we have questions, we have hands up. Leonard.
Point of order. I'm sorry, we had a motion on the floor that we never finished.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I just assumed.
Just keeping you honest, Shirley.
Yes, no, that's why we are here to support each other. Thank you. We'll go back. We'll put this on pause. And we had a motion on the table. So anyone who opposes to adopt that letter to have the DOE update the adult website and give additional support and resources for adult scholars, please state so, or you wish to abstain at this time, please say so at this time. I know you have your hands up, Maddie. Is it in regards to the motion or to the discussion about President's Council?
The discussion.
Okay, so anyone, so I'm not hearing any opposition or anyone who wants to abstain for the record. So our proposition letter is adopted. So thank you. So now, Maddie, you have the floor.
I do. Actually, I have a question regarding the discussion on how we're supposed to develop parent leaders. how effective can we be as President's Council presidents if we don't have access to our constituents? These people vote us in, but we don't have access to their contact information.
Well,
How
your
am I
FLC
supposed to, how am I supposed to develop them? How am I supposed to even know if there's an issue if I don't have contact with them? Every contact that happens currently goes to the district office, which to me stifles what I would like to do as a President's Council president with the PTA, with the PA and PTA leaders or parent leaders.
So we're going to have an honest conversation with FACE, and Dr. Melendez is always here to support us, who's the executive director of FACE. But not all President's Council face that issue. Your family leadership coordinator, or obviously it falls on the superintendent, are supposed to supply, not the word I would use, but it's supposed to
furnish me with a list.
The list of your membership. They are supposed to verify who's your members, what school.
Okay, because and
with their contact information. Yes.
Okay. Right, because again, I feel I've questioned, and I've been active for quite some years, and I've questioned the need for a President's Council president this particular year. Again, no access to our constituents. I don't even know if the district office is getting questions. I'm not hearing that they have any. The message, and this is the reality, the message that we as parent leaders send as volunteers would be entirely different than, let's just say, what some parent coordinators may give based on those relationships, or even based on, or even like what the district office may give. We serve a purpose, and the purpose that we serve, to me, is null and void if we don't have access to our constituents.
Absolutely, and we can discuss it more online, but they are supposed to verify your membership, right? Verify who your membership are and their contact information. Are you using the DOE? Do you have an email for President's Council? Is another way after you get the contacts, but your membership.
Listen, I am like an open book. Don't email me, text me.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm like, listen, I don't even want you to email me. You can text me, you can call me. That's how open I am to whatever it is that the district needs are for in terms of parent leadership. I'm an open book. Listen, call me, contact me, text me. I don't care what time it is. Get it out of your brain at 3:00 in the morning. I'm gonna answer it. But if I'm not hearing anything, and I don't know who, obviously the older PTA presidents, that's one thing, I get it. But if I'm not hearing anything from anybody, nor do I have access, I don't know who to ask if anybody is, if everybody's okay.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point. We need to support our PTAs, our membership, the way they need it to support. And the only way you can do that is to hear from them, right? And so
right. And I don't want to hear, we don't want to hear from them with it like where there's someone as an intermediary. I don't.
No,
we shouldn't have
exactly.
To send
no, it should not be. It should not be like that. I'm going to make that clear. It should not be like that. Most of us are not operating that way. So, so this is why we are addressing this issue going into the second half of the school year. It's a new calendar year. Address issues that President's Councils are having in regards to their supporting their membership, so they can support their schools. We're the direct line for the PTAs, and
we are a wealth of information. And again, we serve them.
Yes, exactly.
If not for them, voting us in, we wouldn't be in the positions that we're in.
That's absolutely. We are the servants to our membership. Membership should be driving President's Council and not the other way around. Lydia, you have your hands up.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address Ms. Gonzalez too, to just say that if it might be something with your FLC and you need to address that conversation, your communication with them, because I know mine, we have a good communication and I'm looped into everything. So if one of the PAs reach out or PTAs reach out and there's an issue, she makes sure that I'm on every call, that I'm on every email. So I think that that's where I think maybe that's where you should start first, your communication with them, because I feel like that's, they're there to liaison to help you communicate with your PTAs and PAs. And I feel like that's where you should start first. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. That's good advice. And this is how we support each other. Randy can't speak, but Randy makes a good point. At your President's Council meeting, ask membership to give you their contact information so you can create your distribution list. And what I use is registration for the Zoom meetings. They already automatically giving you their contact information. That's a good way of doing so. I see this is going to start a whole conversation, and I see Sharon here. We have 3 minutes, and we'll pause our updates and let our guests speak at 10 o'clock, and we can continue the conversation afterwards, right? So Adriana, you have your hand up, and then followed by Becky.
I was just going to provide another
Becca.
solution or kind of explain what I have done. So we have a very similar issue in District 28. It's partially because Sonia is so busy, and she is very, very busy. I respect that, but it's also because all of our PA and PTAs aren't fully up and running yet. So what I did was I went onto the DOE website and looked at all of the schools in our district and started going onto the PA, if they exist, the PA and PTA websites, and pulling information directly from there. Just trying to be as, or doing as much as I can myself versus waiting for information that other people don't necessarily have. So that's been somewhat successful if it works for anyone else.
Thank you so much for sharing. And Becca, District 30.
So I've been actively had this problem for a while. So I've been actively recruiting information from people by having a Google form that they fill out. I ask them to fill out. And then every meeting I have been advising everybody to have a general email for the President's Council that they transfer at the time you transfer for records, so that each year you don't have to go and try to find these people. Have your specific PTA email available to the President's Council so that when you transfer records, we have that information and we can still contact your PTA. I also run a Facebook group, I run an Instagram account, and I have a website, all different ways trying to get people's information. I mean, the different ideas.
Thank you for sharing that. That's good ideas. Some of us are doing that. And I saw Kathy, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something to the conversation? And I see Tamara.
I don't want to take up time. I just feel like we need to solve this for these two districts. I wanted to really understand the problem. It's like they're not being given a spreadsheet with the names and the email. That's like really mind-boggling to me. So I feel like on this call we should really make it do our best to solve this once and for all for them with face. That's not the way to operate. I'm just lending my support. I do have those other ideas as well, but I've been hearing this for every month, and it just seems like it's just not something. It's just something that is in 5 seconds can be taken care of. So perhaps on this call we could solve it for them once and for all.
So the benefit of the citywides, we have face support. Right, our support is Anthony Settle. The other citywides, CCHS, here have their face support at the city level, but on our meetings, we have face on the platform. So they have an agenda item on our monthly meetings, and this is where to ask those questions. But I would like to not to embarrass anybody, not to be too specific with names and stuff, but Dr. Christina Melendez has been here since the very beginning, so she is hearing this. Our face liaison is also here. Anthony Settle is hearing that. So when they are going to be part of this conversation, and we have them here because we must develop our DOE partnership with our FLCs and our face liaisons and our parent coordinators. And at this time, it is 10:01. We have Sharon Rencher here to discuss the DCE template and I will give her the floor to introduce herself, what is her role. And Sharon, thank you for being here. You have the floor, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Randy, for inviting me to present on the DCEP template. And good morning to everyone and Happy New Year. I hope you're well, and I'm wishing for you and your families, of course, a healthy, first and foremost, and then, of course, safe and joyous and prosperous New Year. So again, thanks for inviting me. I know we have about 20 minutes to present, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm hoping I have the ability to share. Let's see if that is the case.
You do.
Okay. There we are. Let me just start the slideshow. Okay, can everyone see this? Please let me know if you're... Oh, okay,
Yes,
wonderful. All right, thank you. I'll try to be succinct and then we'll, save some time for some questions. But I am going to provide just an overview of the revised 2022-23 DCEP template. And again, we'll answer any questions you might have. We're actually in the midst of the process right now. So let's just go really quickly through it, and then I'll share with you the current timeline, where we are, and what the expectations are for this process. Okay, so again, we'll focus on the overview, but we'll talk about stakeholder engagement because I know that that's very important to this group, and the expectations are that you are very much engaged in the process with your DLTs and your high school superintendents as well. We'll walk through the DCEP development process and then the timeline for DCEP submission and review. And as I mentioned, we'll spend some time answering any questions you might have. So this year, the DCEP template was revised to align with the Chancellor's 5 system-wide priorities for this school year. I know you've seen these priorities before in previous presentations, but just to review them briefly, priority 1 is all students learn to read well. Priority 2 is all students are physically and emotionally safe. Priority 3 is all students have a high-quality academic experience. Priority 4 is all students graduate college and career ready and have a strong plan and pathway to economic security. And priority 5 is to redesign the system to be more inclusive and responsive for parents and families, including having more families choose New York City public schools. And that is a really important priority. And I'm hoping that with the continued partnerships, we can make that come to fruition. So thanks again. So there are 2 versions of the DCE template that I'll walk through. One is for community school districts and DLTs, and one is for high school districts with their stakeholders. And because of the Chancellor's accountability structure for all superintendents this year regarding the DCEP, this year, and this will be the first time that high school superintendents are being required to develop their own DCEP, while also at the CSD level, the expectation will continue that that high schools will be represented in the DLT discussions by the high school representatives who do regularly attend those meetings. So this is the table of contents for the CSD, DCEP that DLTs are working on. I'll briefly share what the high school template is, but they are almost exactly the same. There's actually one difference only in the 2, and that difference is in section 8, and we'll talk about that. So section 1 really just is the overview of the process. It really just, it talks again about the Chancellor's 5 priorities. It makes the point that the DCEP does satisfy all of the state and federal requirements for district level planning and to engage stakeholders in shared decision-making around school and district-based planning. Section 2 does provide an opportunity for the district to provide the contact information for the superintendent's team. Section 3 is the district stakeholder involvement signature page, and that is really where stakeholders, the DLT stakeholders, and when we talk about high schools now, high school stakeholders provide information about who is actually engaged in development of the plan. Just reminding everyone that the requirement is that that stakeholders are engaged in the process, but stakeholders do sign indicating their participation in the development of the DCEP, not that they are approving the DCEP, and that's an important point. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming section. Section 4 is really where the district has an opportunity to provide information about what makes you unique, contextual information about the district and the population of students that you serve, and again, any important information that you'd like to share about your mission, your vision, and again, what makes your district unique. Section 5 is really the meat of the plan, the continuous improvement planning section. And this is where the districts are indicating your goals, your annual goals, your progress measures, how you're going to measure progress toward meeting those goals, and then your action plans. And we'll review that a little bit more in more detail in a moment. Section 6 is where the district is describing your multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. And you should know that that this section is really where the district is indicating your academic intervention services plan. Every district, and this is, you know, according to the state requirements, has to develop an academic intervention services plan that provides guidance to schools around how we're going to provide academic and social emotional support to students to improve their outcomes and address their needs. And then Section 7 is the district level parent and family engagement policy. I'm sure you know that for Title I districts, and all of our districts except for 2 are Title I districts. And even though we have 2 that are not, the expectation is that all districts develop a parent and family engagement policy, because this is, you know, it's core. It's a key priority of the chancellor. It's a key priority for our system. And so it's important that every district does have this policy indicating how parents and families are being engaged in improving outcomes for students. And Section 8, which just pertains to the CSD DCEP template, is the District 100.11 plan and biennial evaluation. The reason why it's only included in the CSD DCEP template, I'm going to ask whoever just joined to go to mute. Thank you so much. Is because this is, again, reminding us that high school superintendents and teams are expected to have representation or continue to have representation on DLTs. And the 100.11 plan really is a district's plan for how school leadership teams, schools, and the districts will engage in shared decision-making around school-based planning. And on a biennial basis, every 2 years, districts engage in a process to evaluate the effectiveness of shared decision-making around school-based planning for their school leadership teams. And so, so again, there's the plan and the biennial every 2-year evaluation, and that is a process that happens for pre-K through 12 through the SLT evaluations. And so, as I mentioned, there is a separate DCEP for high schools, and it is exactly the same as I mentioned, with the exception of Section 8. So in this slide, we'll just review the expectations for stakeholder engagement. And as mentioned, for community school districts, the District Comprehensive Education Plan, or the DCEP, is developed by the DLT. You know that the requirements for the engagement of DLTs in developing the DCEP is specified, or are specified, in Chancellor's Regulation A655, which also provides the guidance regarding requirements for school leadership teams. The high school level DCEP is developed by the high school superintendent in consultation with high school stakeholder representatives, and those representatives can include CCHS, the high school presidents, presidents councils, but also, there is a high school subcommittee that's referenced in A655, and that subcommittee, the purpose of that subcommittee really is on a citywide basis to engage high school stakeholders, including superintendents and representatives of our unions and our parent leaders and other stakeholders, to really look at the needs of high schools across the city, since we do have a citywide application process that enables students to, of course, choose high schools across the city. So really to look at the needs of high schools as a whole, and then have that information be the basis of the discussions at the DLT meetings in community school districts. And so the DCEP does align, as I mentioned, with the system-wide priorities, those 5 priorities that we reviewed on an earlier slide, and as mentioned, does satisfy all of the regulatory requirements set forth by the state, as well as by under the federal ESSA Act. Again, you should know that there's an effort, made in previous years ago. There used to be separate plans to respond to state and federal requirements. But again, this is the comprehensive plan that does address all those requirements. And I did mention, and you'll see referenced in this note, that the signatures of the constituency representatives, again, just indicates that consultation has occurred, that there was engagement of stakeholders in development of the DCEP, but again, not that, that there's approval of the plans themselves. This slide just walks us through just the DCEP development process. And this process is the same process that we use at the school level, where in this case, districts identify the priority areas. And in this case, those priority areas are those 5 that we mentioned earlier. And then in response to those priority areas, to help us to understand where we are in terms of our needs in each of the priority areas, our districts engage in a comprehensive needs assessment. And this really just engages, a thorough analysis of the district's data, looking at the district's strengths and the areas of need, how students are performing, both in subject area and in particular grades and grade levels. And again, to look at where the needs really are, so that can inform the development of SMART goals in step 3. And then step 4 is really where districts look at how they're going to monitor progress toward meeting the goals that were established, reminding everyone that SMART goals do require that we are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely in the goal setting. And in our progress monitoring, we're really setting interim measures that we're going to look at to help us to know that we are moving in a positive direction toward achieving our SMART goals. And in step 4, the DLT again is determining those targets. And then in step 5, creating action steps. And we call them progressive action steps, because the action steps should be logical. What are we going to do first, then next, toward, again, achieving our goals? And then step 5, importantly, within each area, within each priority area, districts are expected to develop family and community engagement strategies that will help us to in implementing our action steps. And then in step 7, you're really aligning the resources to the goals that have been specified. And this is a process that's engaged in for each of those 5 priority areas. That's really how the DCEP template is organized. You'll see a section for each of the priority areas that was referenced earlier. And I'm going to just go back to review them again. These are the 5 priority areas. The DCEP template has a section 5 section for each of the priorities, where districts are looking at their needs for each of these areas. They're determining, again, the goals for each area. They're looking at how they're going to measure progress toward achieving the goals for each area, and are again developing action plans to help us to meet those goals. And again, family engagement strategies, and then again, aligning resources to support that. Okay, so now we're just going to look a little more closely at the section for progress monitoring. And this, as I mentioned earlier, is where districts are really setting measures and targets for how they're going to assess progress toward meeting the goals. We're expecting progress monitoring to occur at 2 monitoring periods during the school year. It really is a midpoint, middle of the year progress monitoring, and then end of the year progress monitoring. And again, for each of the system-wide priority areas that we reviewed together, superintendents with their DLTs or high school stakeholders are expected to identify what you would expect to see at the end of each of those periods. Again, middle of the year and then end of the year, to know if the district is on track toward reading the identified outcome. And I think you know that that many times we won't have official data, meaning the outcome of the state assessments or the outcome in terms of graduation rate data until after the school year is over. And so that's why internally districts and schools as well, because schools are expected to engage in this as well, they come up with progress targets for the end of the year, again, expecting that they would have some advanced information about whether they would achieve the goals that might be reflected in terms of, state assessment results or graduation rates. And so the progress monitoring targets can be a percentage or a number, but again, the idea is to reflect a sufficient increase toward meeting the goal. So you'll see on the chart, there's a place where districts will indicate the measurement tool. And we know that we do have a lot of tools that we're using now to gauge student progress. There would be a key performance indicator. And then the baseline date and data is where are we now when we're looking at that measurement tool. And then you're setting a target for the middle of the year and the end of the year. I will tell you that I know that we have limited time together, so I'm going through this pretty quickly, but I'm certainly willing at any time, myself or my team, to have a deeper dive into the DCEP template, into the progress monitoring, or any of the other process elements of DCEP planning. So, but this is kind of just like a brief overview. So I'm sorry I'm going through this pretty quickly in the short time that we have together. So this is the timeline for DCEP submission and review, and you'll see that the expectation was that superintendents submit their preliminary DCEPs for central review and feedback by January 6th, which was last Friday. I'm happy to report that we've received the DCEPs, and again, they're preliminary DCEPs for each of the districts, the CSD districts and the high school superintendents. We're currently in the process of reviewing each of the DCEPs so that we can provide supportive feedback to superintendents and DLTs and your stakeholder groups at the high school level. And then by the end of next week, January 20th, superintendents will be receiving feedback that they will be able to share with DLTs and your high school stakeholder groups during your upcoming meetings. And the expectation would be that you would use the time between February 10th or even as soon as when superintendents receive their feedback and are able to share. But through the middle of February, you would be making adjustments or revising your DCEPs in response to the feedback that Central has provided. And then by February 17th, the expectation is that the DLTs and high school superintendents and stakeholders will review and sign the stakeholder signature page. And we do provide DocuSign as an option for you to be able to sign virtually, or you can sign via whatever means makes sense for your teams, your DLTs and your high school superintendents and stakeholders. And again, we always say that and going back to what I mentioned earlier, your signing of the DCEP is to indicate that you participated in the development or that you were consulted in the development. It's not mandatory that you sign. You always have the opportunity to attach some information indicating why you may not have decided to sign. But again, it is not approval, it is consultation and participation in the development. And then by February 27th or the end of the month, superintendents are approving the finalized DCEPs for public posting. And then the approved DCEPs are posted on a rolling basis and will be available on the iPlan portal. We just recently updated the iPlan portal so that for future development of the DCEP, much like CEPs already have the opportunity to engage in CEP development via iPlan, now going forward, the DCEP development process will also be able to be facilitated on iPlan directly. But the plans, the DCEP finalized plans will be posted there and will be available for the public to review at any time. And then on a regular basis, periodically, it's expected that districts are monitoring progress toward meeting the annual goals and to update your action plans as appropriate. Again, with the benefit of the progress monitoring section that we just reviewed together and the targets that were set. A good use of your DLT monthly meetings and your monthly meetings with your high school superintendents as well is to review the progress, right? To talk about where we are in the implementation of our action plans and what data might be available, again, that we have outlined that are going to help us to monitor progress and know where we are toward meeting those goals. And then in June and early July, the Division of School Leadership Central Team will be reviewing DCEPs again to assess the extent to which district targets have been met. So mid-year, which is what's happening now, we're providing supportive feedback based on our review at Central of each district's DCEP. And then at the end of the year, we'll review and we'll inform the extent to which district targets have been met. Okay, and now we are up to Q&A, and so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can answer any questions that you might have. Okay, and I'm looking at the time, and I got through that in about 20 minutes. I have to ask Shirley and Randy, are we okay with Q&A?
We're okay, no worries, because we do save space at the end to go back to our business. So no worries, because this is very important, and we ask you to come because we are mandatory members of our district leadership team. So this is a very important information that they want. So I don't see any hands up or questions in the chat, not any direct questions yet.
Okay,
so,
well, I will say
I'm
again, I'm sorry, Shirley, I wanted to say if there are no questions, I want to just offer again our willingness to come back at any time or to have a special session for you to do a deeper dive and to spend more time, with you answering any questions you might have. I know your time is short today.
Adriana had her
He
hands.
said
Did she put her hands?
District
Had her
28
hands?
had their hand up.
I did.
Yeah,
I just entered it in the chat. I just entered it in the chat. I was going to ask if we could have Sharon's email so that we could contact her directly if we wanted to do that deeper dive or if we had any direct questions after our respective DLT meetings. Thank you, Sharon.
Sure, just put it in there. So thank you. Happy to.
And someone asked for closed captioning. This is not my Zoom. I don't see if they have closed captioning capability. Sorry, I didn't ignore, but that button is not here. I don't think this Zoom has closed caption, unfortunately, and I apologize on that. Sharon, we did as a CEP template group. We are actually having a meeting, so I could say this update right now for the working group today at 4. So if you have any further questions, we could also address them at that template group. And I'm just going to forewarn you, we're going to have a lot of questions regarding high schools because of the since the high school DCEP is not by district, but by superintendent, is raising a whole lot of questions regarding consultation, participation, etc. So I just want to forewarn you about that.
Sure. And again, just really briefly, because I did see in the chat, and I won't take up too much time because we will discuss it later, but just for this body to know that that it is correct that high schools will still be represented in the DLT discussions that are happening. But in addition, so this is in addition to, it's an and, not an exception, right? That in addition, high school superintendents with stakeholders will be developing their own DCEP. And this is really because, you know, in our new structure, the high school superintendents and CSD superintendents have more responsibility now. They have bigger teams and more responsibility and accountability. And so it's important that they have the opportunity to develop goals and action plans to be able to share that as well, that the things that are unique to their high school populations. So it's an and, but do trust that the needs of high schools are still being represented and addressed at the CSD level. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to, stop, and I know you're going to move on. And Shirley, I'll look forward to speaking later today during our CEP working group. And again, thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Randy. And thanks everyone for inviting me to speak today. And thank you, Faith, as well.
Shirley, I do have a
Sharon.
question for Sharon, if she can take it, if I can, the 3 minutes we have, please.
Yeah, actually it's Faith's turn, but sure, go ahead.
I appreciate
Christina is willing to state it. Go ahead, Rima.
Thank you, Christina. I was wondering, you mentioned that if someone didn't want to sign the DCEP, that they could include like a letter or something explaining why. And my question is, what happens when stakeholders don't want to sign the DCEP because they don't feel that they were consulted or that they had a hand in crafting it, and they can't sign it because they can't verify that that mandated consultation occurred? So I hear you when you say we don't have to necessarily agree, but what happens when the reason we don't sign is because we were not consulted? What is the consequence then for that team?
Sure, absolutely. And that's why it's important to be able to include that information, to attach a letter, because there's follow-up, right? There is the expectation of stakeholder engagement in this process. So if we're learning that there was not appropriate stakeholder engagement, of course, we'll want to go back and find out, well, what happened here? What were the barriers? Was there a lack of an opportunity to participate in development? Were there specific barriers that presented, the parents to be engaged in the process or other stakeholders? Whatever the issue is, our goal is to resolve the issue. So your input is taken very seriously and will be followed up on, because we want to, clarify and address any concerns that were raised so that, again, going forward, those issues would be cleared up. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And that's a great question, Rima. Thank you. And thank you, Sharon. It's always a pleasure. And we definitely will have you back.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
I'm happy to hear again. I don't see DC Quintana. Dr. Melendez, would you like to start your update? Give us updates for FACE, and let's kind of continue that conversation if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to flag for you that if she comes on, I'm happy to interrupt and then carry on after, just because she's tight on her schedule as well. So good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Happy New Year. I hope you all had a restful vacation or break this holiday season. I wanted to start with January 9th. We hit the ground running with launching our CEC elections. So that campaign is up and on its way, and I'm just gonna.
Dr. Melendez?
Yes.
Yeah, DC Quintana is here.
Perfect, go ahead.
Thank you. So our Deputy Chancellor of Teaching and Learning is here to continue our conversations of what is happening under her division, our academics, our curriculum. I'm just going to give it straight to DC Quintana to speak to us. You have the floor, and Happy New Year, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Shirley. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Good to see you all. Those who are on camera, good to see your actual faces, and the rest of you, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I don't really have anything prepared to speak to you, and thought that I would just provide a very quick overview and then maybe some room for questions. We have a lot that we're doing as a team, and I'm really, really excited about so much of it. And you've heard about many of the initiatives that we've launched, but there's a lot that really isn't part of the press releases or the big sort of announcements that just brings me great joy and a lot of pride in the work that the team does. So as you know, we have this comprehensive approach to really developing a system that is addressing the literacy needs of all of our kids. So not only making sure that every single child can read, but that they really establish strong literacy skills that include reading, writing, speaking, listening. And that has a lot that we've launched this year, including landmark dyslexia programs. As you may know, we opened programs in 4 schools this year in District 5, 15, and 7 for students with print-based disabilities and including dyslexia, that have both core instruction and very specific interventions to address those needs. One of those is looking to become an actual standalone school for next year, and then we're looking to open additional programs across boroughs and districts for next year as well. And so right now on the docket, we have just under, so hopefully about 8 programs that we know we're going to be able to transition into this model. And then we're looking to add additional programs, making sure that we're including elementary, middle, and high school. And we're taking a look at where the need is based on our data, based on what we know in terms of IEPs, but also just based this year on what we've been learning through screeners, secondary screeners, and some of the work that we've been doing around intensive intervention. So really, really excited about that. And I don't know how many of you know this, but I come to this work with a literacy background. So I was a literacy coach myself. And even when I was in high school, having been an L and supported my own family in thinking about language, I became a tutor as a high school student for other folks because literacy and learning to read was really important to me. And so this is work that you know, isn't just important to do for the city, but really has it's a personal passion of mine as well. So I'm excited about that part. The thing that we know is that we need to make sure that people know how to do this work. And so a large part of what we've been doing is training. And so training isn't the kind of thing that you'll necessarily see in a school or that your child brings home, but it should be something that you can ask principals about, that you can find out in terms of what are the new strategies teachers are using. And when you go to schools to visit or when you're asking your child about things, making sure that you see the right resources in the room. A lot of the schools are making reference directly to it's time for Heggerty or it's Foundations time. You know that if you hear those words, those are the programs that are grounded in real explicit phonics instruction, and that teachers have learned how to use some of those systems so that they can lead kids through learning how to read. The other big thing that involves both training but implementation is screeners, and you may have heard about those. So screeners are those initial assessments. They're these very quick, they're like little tests that let us know what kids can do in terms of reading and math. And they give teachers very specific and timely information that's immediate results, right? About where kids are and what they need to develop. And so that allows teachers to then shift what they're doing in the class for the groups of kids they have in front of them. Schools are also using that information to create intervention periods. And so if your child or your neighbor's child, your friend's child, your relative's child is struggling with reading, be sure to ask about what interventions the child is receiving and what information they used to make those decisions and to monitor that child's progress. Because that's how we're using those screeners. And we want to make sure that parents receive that kind of information and they know what kind of intervention, and very specific and targeted intervention, that kids are receiving. For kids who need that light touch, and for the things that are happening for all students, you'll see some of that in the classroom itself, right? And that looks like small groups. It may look like different texts in front of them. For kids who need additional support, there should be intervention periods that are built in, or an intervention block, or a separate time when kids really get smaller group with teachers, so the ratio is different, and they get at least 30 minutes of that kind of intervention that is specific to where they're faring in terms of those assessments. And that lets them then be able to, when they're back in the regular classrooms, to be able to engage in everything that's happening in there. The whole point of receiving the intervention is for the child to be able to engage in the general work. And in doing that, we narrow or we reduce the number of kids who struggle in school. And the number of kids who end up getting identified for needing services to special education because they didn't have their reading needs met. Not that students who have learning disabilities won't be referred for special education services. That should still continue to happen. But we're able to identify more and more children who needed support with reading and not other types of learning disabilities. And so I think that that'll be really helpful for us. As you may or may not have heard, we had pilots across several schools. So a number of schools, actually. We started with 40 schools. We'll end up with 160 who are receiving intensive intervention support. And that means that we have interventionists who are going in there and teaching the schools how to do intensive intervention. So for the kids who, after the first set of so the way it works is you do an assessment, you find out if they need intervention. After the first round of interventions, it looks like 30 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing. If the children still need additional interventions or they're not making progress, there's a secondary screener that can happen besides the second round of screeners, so the middle of year screeners. But there's a secondary screener to determine whether or not the child needs additional support. And if so, then that's where this intensive intervention comes in. And so these 160 schools are part of a pilot, piloting assessments for identifying students at risk of dyslexia, and to understand how we can scale this work across New York City. And so we've already learned a lot about what kind of program we want to put in place for next year so that more and more schools have access to this kind of work. That doesn't mean that students who may be struggling across other schools or aren't making progress with interventions across other schools don't get intensive intervention or don't get supports. These schools are some of our schools with the lowest data who are receiving very intensive support. In addition to that, though, I think I'd mentioned to you all already that we have academic intervention specialists at every district, and we have literacy coaches across the schools. And principals have been instructed to just let their SUPs know if children are struggling and they need support on how to help them. So that we'll still be able to intervene with children who aren't part of those 160 schools, and that includes 80 elementary schools and 80 secondary schools, so a combination of middle and high school. We want to make sure that we're always including middle and high school. We did a lot with elementary this year, and we're going to build up much more with middle and high school for next year. So I think those are things that maybe you had heard a little bit about already and had some working knowledge. I think what's really, really important there is, make sure that you're asking when you go to schools, what's the curriculum you're using? Is it grounded in the science of reading? Is it teaching phonics explicitly? They're supposed to, especially for K through 2, already have made that switch. For 3 through 5, we'll be moving in that direction, but we need to make sure that the first step is that they're using high quality curriculum that allows us to dig deeply into how to teach reading. And even for the children who may be more proficient readers, we want to make sure that they have those foundational skills. What happens oftentimes is a lot of kids will get support through tutoring or support at home, and they learn to become readers that way. And it's a responsibility as a school for us to be able to do that work for them. It's great if parents can intervene, but we absolutely need to make sure that as a school, we're doing that first. The other piece is that we often will miss kids because they're just so stinking smart. Kids have really great memories. They learn all kinds of tricks. And so if they're still using the cueing system in your school where they're talking about the first letter and the picture and make meaning and things like that, and does it make sense, that that's not reading, right? That's guessing, and kids are really good at it. But as soon as those words get more difficult, or as soon as that text doesn't include photos, they're going to have a really hard time. And that's when you see children who loved elementary school, maybe struggled a little bit in the latter years, and then in middle school, they can't anymore. Or you saw them in the early years really enthusiastic, and then by the time they get to 4th and 5th grade, they really struggle. We want to make sure we're catching all of those kids, and if we have the right curriculum in place and the teachers are trained and parents are asking questions about it and holding them accountable, then we can make sure this is happening. It's not on you though to make sure that happens. We're asking superintendents to make sure they're checking in with their principals and they're verifying that curricula is there and the training has happened, and we're re-upping all of that work with them again now. And so as a system, we're working together to put these pieces in place. So that's, I think in terms of literacy, those are the big updates and announcements. And just for you to know that we're expanding that work. Before I share anything else, any questions about literacy work?
I'm seeing no hands in the chat or.
I see, oh no,
comments.
that's you. You're on 2 things. That's cute. And I love that you're a Mets fan. Now I love you even more.
Oh, so that's mutual. I don't see any hands up or any questions in the chat regarding literacy at this time. Maybe they're typing, but you could finish your updates and we'll save the Q&A at the end.
Yeah, and just also want to add, like, while we talk about this in very general terms, we're always talking about, this includes our students with disabilities. This includes our students who are English language learners. We're piloting right now screeners in different languages. We're working with an organization right now to think about how we can support dyslexia for Spanish-speaking students. So there's a lot of work that's happening that we may not mention in these sort of general conversations, but you should always know that our students with disabilities and our English language learners are at the forefront for the work that we're doing. And in fact, of the programs that we're looking to launch for next year, part of the idea is we want to create a more inclusive school system as a whole. Right? We want to create environments where our children can go to their local community school and have the services they need. And so that means that we're placing these programs that address print-based disabilities and that where we can make sure that teachers know how to look for the markers of dyslexia or other needs in across our communities. And so just making sure that that's clear, that it's not just for one set of students or for particular neighborhoods or communities either. So the next big one, and one we keep being asked a great deal about, is curriculum. And while we don't have anything concrete to share just yet, I did want to say, because I've heard this a lot from parents, and it's research that we've looked into and something that we're really, I think it's important to note that we want to make sure that every single school, at minimum, starts with high quality instructional materials. And that means that we are going to have to make decisions about what schools use and don't use, and what they're putting in front of students, so that we level a playing field, right? At minimum, you're starting with the right materials in front of you. And those materials, as we know, teachers have to be, and leaders, not just teachers, actually, leaders are a huge part of this. They have to be trained on what that curriculum is, what it demands, what those resources need to be, how a classroom needs to be set up for it, so that they can support it and they can make decisions around it. And so we're doing a great deal of work to make sure that every teacher is utilizing research and evidence-based, high quality curricula. You heard me say again that we'd already asked folks in K through 2 to select only from a short menu of the phonics or the explicit reading curricula that we had. And we're going to continue to refine those lists and move up into 3 through 5. And so that work will continue. We don't have anything concrete to share with you yet, but we do want to, we'll continue the work of the phonics-based foundational literacy curriculum, and then we'll look at additional curricular adoption, and always make sure that there is professional learning attached to that, so that our leaders and our teachers know toward what they are working. Really important for us, though, is a one-time professional learning is not enough, and we know that. And so part of what we want to make sure that we're always including is ongoing training. And part of what we've been talking to folks about is, and how do we, what's the way that we include parents in this? And not that parents need to be trained on the curriculum itself, but certainly on what to look for, how to support at home, what kinds of questions to ask and pieces like that. And so those are parts that we'll be thinking about as well and working with Christina and her team to be able to build out. And maybe Christina, that's part of where we can use that really cool van that you have, the parent truck. Bring those trainings to the community. I think, you heard me say a little bit already, citywide professional learning. We're making sure that this learning is attached necessarily to the work that we're doing. So in the past, we've often had like, here's this training, here's that training. It's all great stuff. We need to make sure that it's connected directly to what we're emphasizing. And so our professional learning is very much focused on literacy, on foundational math skills. It will be attached to the curriculum. And I think the most important part, or at least I feel like it's the most important part right now, is making sure that all of our folks are being built up with a culturally responsive lens. And so I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but there's a great deal of professional learning that's happening already and that will continue to happen around culturally responsive teaching and not just in terms of how we facilitate a lesson, but really the mindset that goes with it, the resources that are needed, and even for parents and for including parents in that work, rather, even for leaders. Really important that our leaders are part of it. And so we have a range of different opportunities. So we work with the Metro Center through NYU, and there are 6 sessions for up to 300 educators that end in a decolonizing education conference. We have over 1,000 staff in cohort models with citywide professional learning communities. And so there are these school teams and then professional learning communities that will meet to deepen CRSE mindsets and create CRSE action plans, and then generate teaching questions of implementation that they can bring back to their schools. And teachers are the good thing about this is that it's not only something that is obviously really important for us to do, but in order to help boost teachers, there's sort of pathways to leadership and to making just livelihoods. They get to earn credits for their licensing, and they're also there are opportunities for them to earn additional pay. And so, really trying to motivate folks to be part of this work. We also have space for district level teams to register, focused on training the instructional leads and the coaches, because we want to make sure that if our teachers are getting trained, the people who support them and who support the principals are also receiving that kind of support so that they know how to go in and coach. They know how to go in and look for things and ask for questions. They know what to ask for in terms of additional resources. And so that's happening too. And then I'd mentioned the Decolonizing Education Conference that happens in May. And so, folks across the city are invited to be part of that, whether you're part of the PLC cohort or the other kinds of trainings. And so that's really exciting. And that training is also happening across our different teams. So we have CRSE training happening under the Division of Multilingual Learners. It's happening with our educator development, and we're building that into the work that we're doing for even with the Big Apple winners and things like that. So really exciting that's work that we're doing, and obviously it's tied to our Mosaic work and the work that continues to happen in terms of developing those curricular materials. Let's see. I know there's a lot that went into the chat, so let me see if any of these are questions for me.
No questions for you.
Okay.
No questions for you. Well, but we do have our hands raised though.
Okay. Yeah. Please. Yeah, because otherwise
we have
it just feels like too much talking. I want to make sure that this is
No,
more
I
engaging.
understand that.
Yeah.
So District 20, Tamara, you have your hands up.
Yeah, that was a lot of information. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask a question about the parent aspect when it comes to like the new curriculum. And will the parent aspect be, when it comes to helping the kids understand the new curriculum, will it be in languages that are translated as well? Because I know when Common Core came out, a lot of it happened, like the teachers were learning as they were teaching the kids, and the parents were learning as, the kids were learning. And a lot of it, the way that happened, it was hard for a lot of parents to help their children because we didn't understand where a lot of the references came from, because we're not in the classroom when the kids were learning. So we didn't learn a lot of the, let's say, like the math and the ELA, we didn't learn it the way that our kids were taught. So, we were trying to teach a lot of our children the way we learned it. And there was multiple issues because like the way my husband was doing the math with my kid was a completely different way than what was taught in the class. And sometimes the children didn't understand what the teachers were teaching in the class, and they understood it when they went over with their parents. So like, how is that gonna work? And honestly hope, because a lot of our parents were not educated in the United States. So the education from other countries are completely different. So it's just, trying to, find a compromise so the parents can help their children.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Tamara. My parents were not from the U.S. and didn't grow up here and learn. And while I didn't grow up in the era of Common Core, I definitely experienced that with them. And so while what we won't be doing is teaching parents the curriculum as you would a teacher, part of what that support is about what are the questions you need to ask, what are the ways that you can engage the student, and anytime that that the student has the need for that kind of additional support, that'll be more school specific. And so we'll work with the schools on how to help parents be able to think through some of those pieces. You're absolutely right. Common Core math was very different than the way that we had asked kids to do math before. And it was really about breaking down the thinking in math, so they understand why we ask them to do the formulas, and to be able to give them lots of different ways to solve a problem. We want to continue to encourage that kind of exploration and deep understanding. So what we'll do is just make sure that parents have what they need. The other piece I heard you say though was in different languages, right? And so to think about like, what are the languages that we need to access so that parents can participate, but also can support their kids. So I appreciate that. And I'll bring these concerns back to the team for us to consider as we think about rollout. So thank you for that. I know there's another question from Rima.
Yes, Rima's next, then followed by Adriana.
Thank you. Good morning. So
morning.
I have a question. We're focused a lot on our younger grades, and I feel like we haven't heard enough this year about our high school students and how we're closing the gap with high school. We have high school students going in at 4th grade, 5th grade reading and math levels, and we just don't have enough time to close the gap in that 4 years with being short-staffed, schools being overcrowded. Like there's a slew of issues affecting it. And my question is, what are we doing as far as assistive technology to give students support to close these gaps? We may not be able to get them caught up in reading and math, but we do have the technology right now to get what's in their head onto the paper so we can see where their true learning is and support them in the meantime. But I would just like to hear more about how we're going to support our high school students who are supposed to go into the world in 4 years prepared for it. Would like to hear more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I know that you'd arrived, I think after I'd already shared a little bit, that we recognize that much of the support was provided to elementary this year, and we are building so much more for middle and high school. We do have coaches in those schools, and we do have the opportunity for the academic intervention specialists at the districts to absolutely provide the screeners and the support and the intensive interventions, even in middle school and high school. But the reality is we need to do much, much more for high school. I love your idea because it's something to which we have access, and we can actually train people right now of thinking about what are the assistive technologies that we currently have that all schools have access to. Through Microsoft, we have access to so many different tools that kids can use for reading, for writing, for all kinds of purposes that would absolutely help them. And so that's a really great reminder. And in fact, I'm going to hop on or email later today the folks at Microsoft to see what could we put together immediately for our teachers to think about, already making sure that if they don't remember how to use these tools, that they're reminded. If they never were trained, that they're trained, because they should already be including that in those classes in high school. So thank you, Rima, for that. And yes, stay tuned. I'm a high school person. I absolutely feel the need to support our high school folks that much more. And I know that we have a shortage of people who have those literacy skills and capacity in the high school grades, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be providing those supports. Note too that like we're doing other things that are about supporting math, for example, and we're, in ninth grade, they're getting support through high dosage tutoring and work with Khan Academy that will be happening soon, right? So there are other things that we're thinking about that are not a fix, and they don't change instruction in the classroom, but they certainly help address some gaps in the meantime while we work on the other pieces. And yes, would be happy to think about something offline later on. I see Adriana has a hand up.
Yeah, before Adriana, I'm going to ask a question, since we're talking about high schools. The Office of Student, the new renamed or new Office of Student Pathways, in regarding to your curriculum, what collaboration are you doing in regards to improving the school experience with or making high school students career ready? Are there collaborations?
Just saying that I expect some photos.
Okay, she muted herself. So what collaborations you have in regards to that? And I'm going to share my slide because I had a slide prepared for you before I introduce you, and we got off track. So as you ask that question, I'm going to share the slide that's for your section.
Great, thank you. So Jade and I work very closely together. Jade is the Chief of Career Pathways. Learn, run, vote. Nice slides. So we are working closely together, but even more so recently, I think our initial steps are through, a number of things. One is putting together curricula that the two of us are working on. So for example, we're building a financial literacy curriculum together, right? Like that's an actual collaboration that will yield a product. I think what's more valuable than that is, though, for example, the kind of work that we're doing around math. So we're both very much focused on every child should leave here with the right, not only computational skills, but the skills necessary to, if they choose to go to college, be able to engage in college algebra. If they choose to go to the workforce, those skills are still incredibly beneficial for them. And so what happens in the earlier grades that allows kids to be college algebra ready? And so we're working on how do we connect math to career pathways, and actually are working with potential funders who are interested in this initiative with us to build that piece up. We visited schools together. We visit schools together often, but we actually did this week, and we both talked about a strong need for not just literacy, but the kind of writing that's happening across our schools that is going to lead kids to be able to be workforce ready and college ready, right? And so how do we move away from, it's beautiful to write about ourselves. We all love to do that, but we have to move away from just writing these personal anecdotes to being able to write some very specific types of texts and persuasive writing, expository writing that really let kids get prepared for the workforce. And so we've been having those kinds of conversations about how do we use Jade's pathway work to think about what we need to put in place earlier on. And because we're both working with the local colleges and hope to have some really good news about more college admissions work, that we need to make sure that just because kids are going to be allowed into college in a bigger way, that they're prepared for it. And so we're working together. Those are not things that are concrete in the same way that I mentioned to you, like a financial literacy curriculum. There's an end product, right? It's work that we'll be doing that's ongoing about improving earlier on. You can't wait until college. And that looks like we've talked about it in the arts realm as much as we have in reading and math, so that we're getting kids ready earlier on.
Thank you so much. And we're going to take our last question. Is from District 28, Adriana.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Shirley. I have just a quick question. I want to echo that language access is a huge barrier, at least in District 28, and I assume that it is a barrier in other districts as well, and that it's only going to continue to grow with the changing landscape and the changing demographics of our city. So it is very good to hear that there is a plan to at least address that. I would like to know if there is a specific person or a specific office that should be contacted by our schools, by our principals, whoever's in charge of it in our specific schools, to get that additional either training for our teachers and additional information for our parents. So should they be contacting you, or is there a different specific person?
Sorry, I was on mute. Doesn't fall under my office, but obviously if we receive those, we absolutely can connect you. It does fall under DC Lloyd's office, and so there is, and Christina can connect you, but there is actually a language access coordinator, and there are folks who do that kind of work very specifically.
Sorry,
We support.
I'm sorry, I meant contacting you about the literacy programs that you were discussing.
Oh yeah, feel free.
Like for parent learning how their kids are learning so that they can support their children in their schools and also at the school level.
Yep. So that part, yes. We'll be putting more information out as we develop that. But I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you're trying to actually schedule time with me, I'm actually going to put the name of my, let's see, Precious Jones Walker. She's my EA. She's amazing. She'll help find you time. walker@schools.nyc.gov. I'll put both of those in the chat, and hopefully I spelled them right. I did. Okay, there you go. So that you can connect. But as far as a language access, yeah, that's through Christina can connect you to the folks who do that. And that way you have that information as well. And as soon as we are putting anything out that we're going to publish or any resources, we'll make sure that we're sharing those not only with the teaching and learning folks, but obviously with all of FACE, with the superintendent's offices, because we want to make sure that as many people as possible have those resources. But absolutely reach out. There's my email. And if you want to schedule time, whether it's phone, Teams or email, reach out to Precious. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chancellor Quintana. Our chancellor is here, but there's a question in the chat from YouTube. Can you just answer it in the chat, and our Ms. Dawson will put your response in the chat
for
as well.
review
The
programs like Kumon?
Yes, has there been any type of review of programs like Kumon, which are laser focused on identifying deficits in math?
Yep. So we are actually, and I know that
don't answer
okay.
it. Don't answer it. Just answer it in the chat. All of us will see it. Charlene will put it in the YouTube chat for us, and we are going to introduce our chancellor. His time is, he's usually he's a busy man, tight schedule, yes. So he is present with us on time. So we're going to give the floor to our chancellor, David Banks. Mr.
Thank
Chancellor,
you, everybody.
You have bye and Happy New Year again. Mr. Banks, you have the floor. You was here.
Yes, can you see me?
Oh, yes, we can see you. We can hear you. You're all decked out. Happy New Year, Chancellor.
No tie on today. Not decked out. So
he's still distinguished anyway.
I appreciate it. But good morning, everybody. And just this past Monday, I want to say we announced the kickoff of the citywide and the CEC election season. So we're all excited about that. For those who don't know, right, we're promoting the fact that these councils are really vital opportunities for our families to use their voices and have a direct impact on our schools, our communities, and our kids' education. We've said from the very beginning that parent engagement, parents and families having greater voice in our schools is important, and these elections really represent that. But I'm particularly excited because beginning this year, the families who have a child in a D75 school or D75 program can vote for a D75 representative to sit on each CEC. So that's the first time that's being done. We're really excited about that. It's an important change that's really going to give a stronger voice to our students with the greatest needs, including those with autism, on the autism spectrum, significant cognitive delays, kids with any kind of emotion or disabilities, sensory impairments, and or multiple disabilities. We've spent a lot of time in this space, and I have to tell you, from the time I came in as chancellor, this was not an area that I was necessarily thinking I would spend as much time on, but I've been very happy to be engaged in this space. This is a community which all too often has not felt heard, and I'm just really happy to try to be a champion for our special needs community and make sure that they have the level of representation that they need. But the CEC process is one I'm excited about this year. You know, we want to see some new faces and hear some new voices. I appreciate all those who have stepped up and been in leadership, encouraging them to continue to consider moving forward and continue to do that. But we also want to encourage we get more people involved in this process, not just more people voting, but more people actually running for leadership. And the more that we can, in fact, diversify that, I think the system will be even better. So we've opened the application period to elect council members for the 2023 through 2025 term. Started on January 9th and it's going to run through February 13th. So to achieve a high level of participation in these elections is going to be vital that all parents in our schools understand the role and importance of the councils. That's not always the case. Some people have heard of them, but don't really know what they do. And so we want to ensure that we are demystifying the process and we're helping to explain the ways in which those of us who serve in these roles can be really helpful and how it really does help our schools, helps our districts, and helps our entire school system. So in response to parent feedback, for the first time in the history of these elections, we've been launching this awareness campaign, which is aimed at increasing the voter turnout across the districts in the city. And the awareness campaign is promoting the elections through a variety of channels, including social media, as well as educational videos. But the best way for parents really to familiarize themselves with the work of the councils is to attend their meetings and to see their representatives in action. So we're asking all of you to please encourage all the eligible parents to apply, spread the word. Let's continue to push on this and really make a change. I did an interview with New York One, I think it was the other day, where we were really promoting this, and they gave a lot of good coverage because it emphasizes that pillar that without parent engagement and family and community engagement, the school system can never be all that it is supposed to be. I also want to acknowledge CPAC for I had a letter that was sent to me January 12th. So I want to acknowledge and I appreciate the email regarding the D79 schools and the suggestions on how we can improve access to adult education services, including revamping the DOE webpage to make information more accessible. As many of you know, we've been making significant changes to our website this past year, but I know we have more work to do. And we're going to need all of you to continue to work with us on that as well. One other thing I do want to mention, today the mayor is going to be making his announcement about the preliminary budget. So we are now heading into budget season, and there's going to be a big announcement made this afternoon by the mayor. We here at New York City Public Schools are looking forward to continue to collaborate with the mayor's office as well as OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, on next year's budget. All of you really need to make sure you're paying very close attention. I don't make the budget, even for the DOE. The mayor will put out his preliminary budget. The city council will engage and negotiate. So a lot of what the mayor is putting out and announcing today will be subject to much change. That's why parents have to be involved and making sure your voices are heard really around this process and the kinds of things that we want to see in our schools. So we'll be sharing more information as the budget process continues over the next several months. But the real word here is to stay engaged and make sure that your voices, in fact, are heard. And so with that, I'll take any questions that anybody has.
So we have District 17 with her hands up first. Veronica.
Thank you, Shirley. Good morning, Chancellor Banks, and Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you as well.
Looking forward for a productive year.
Yes.
I have a couple of concerns. The first one is about the plastic-free Thursday, where the kids are not, they have to ask if they need a fork or a spoon, that they're saying that they should be eating finger foods. And some of the food that is served is basically salad. So I'm trying to find out how can they eat finger food with the salad and with all what is going around right now. I mean, we're talking about these little babies. And my next concern, the 3K and pre-K, the plant-based Friday, where they said it's meatless Friday. Our kids are not eating the food. A lot of food are thrown away. If you go to different schools, you will see how many food is being thrown into the garbage. Right. And some of these kids, parents do not send them with snacks. So we're saying that we have 3Ks and 4-year-old who after breakfast have nothing to eat. Right. And sometimes the only meal that they get is a meal from the school. And so for me, I'm a little disturbed about it. So this plant-based, they're saying that there's a substitute with cheese or peanut butter. What about our kids who are allergic to those two items? And now they can't eat that. Therefore, they have nothing to go with for the whole day. So I'm reaching out to you to see how can we move forward and have something better served for our kids in our public school system. Thank you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate that. I think we made a lot of efforts to try to diversify the food offerings for our kids. I'm a little concerned when I hear that the plastic free and there's no fork that is even given to you to even eat a salad. Nobody should be eating a salad just with their fingers. Let us look into that. And if you have very specific examples where you know that is actually happening at a specific school, please either put that in the chat or give that to one of our folks on our team here, because I'd like to follow up.
Sure.
And we will make note of all the other concerns that you just raised. Our whole goal here really is for our kids to have more choice and healthier options. I think that's really what we're really talking about. The mayor has made this a real priority. In fact, we're meeting with the mayor tomorrow to talk about healthy eating choices in schools. He continues to push on that for lots of reasons.
And Chancellor Banks, I do agree we need more healthier choices. However, I think when the conversations are started, the parents need a seat at the table at the beginning of the conversation, not the end, because you just comes up with these ideas, you put it on the table and then expect us to accept it, which it does not work well with everyone. I love the plant-based. However, there should be multiple options for our kids. Thank you.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Yep. And I don't know if we have any of our deputies, anybody that wants to weigh in, but I know that Chris Chicarico, who heads our Office of School Food, before they make any changes to school food menus, they engage parents, they engage students primarily in tasting and getting their voices and opinions on it. So he always has a cadre of people who are coming together for these conversations. So maybe we can bring him in, Kanita, maybe for—
Yeah, Chancellor, he was here last month. He was here last month and discussed all the questions that was being asked. He answered those questions. Well, Nelson actually answered those questions, and we had community food advocates as well. So they were here already last month. So I encourage everyone to go back to YouTube, look at that recording, but we will bring him back. We have planned, we always bring Chris here. He was here like the end of last year as well. So right. There's a lot of members who have their hands up, and I would like to get to them. So we're going to move to Leonard District 2 to ask this question.
Yes, good morning, Chancellor Banks. Happy New Year. Thank you for coming. First, I want to say I appreciate your comments on CEC elections. I just wanted to, two very quick points I want to make in terms of questions to you on two different areas. I'll fit them in my allotted time. First, with regard to CEC elections, we've seen in my district in particular, the UFT kind of starting to impose themselves in terms of CEC elections. And this is something I just want to make sure we can get some guidance on, because I know the UFT had sponsored a workshop. We're also, just in terms of our actually District 2 CC meetings, I'm actually on the District 2 CC, we're seeing, I'm getting evidence behind the scenes of UFT chapter chairs getting parents involved to take certain positions on resolutions that we're involved with. So I just like to get some clarification that the UFT can stay in their lane. They do advocate policies that are certainly not always in alignment with the parents in our district. So I think that's a cause for concern. And I hope that steps will be taken to make sure that the UFT in particular, which I have no beef with, trust me, just does not involve themselves and that the CEC elections remain the province of our parents. That's the first question. Then I was wondering if we could also get an update on the immigration or situation. I know there was probably a sigh of relief that was breathed recently where we were expecting a lot of newly arrived migrants are coming into the city. I think that's still coming. I think there's a wave about to break maybe when the weather changes. And I was wondering what the latest status is on that in terms of numbers and plans and procedures, because we're seeing, especially in my district, large numbers of newly arrived children that are really taxing the resources of our district. So if you could address those two issues of UFT and the migrants, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you, I appreciate you. Deputy Chancellor Lloyd, why don't you speak to the issue, because I've heard a little something about this, particularly as it relates to District 2, and just some clarification of where we are on it. But either way, I would strongly suggest that you also reach out to them as well. I mean, reach out to the head of UFT, Michael Mulgrew, just so you can hear directly from him. If they're taking a position or whatever it is that they're doing. I don't want to tend to speak for him or anybody else. But as it relates to us, Deputy Chancellor Lloyd.
Of course, thank you, Chancellor, and good afternoon to CPAC. Thank you for this meeting today. Leonard, just to respond, follow up to your question about UFT, I know that I just want to acknowledge receipt from your council members of the letter that came to us late last week. We understand that some people may have concerns about how CEC elections were conducted in the past, and we want to be notified, right away if there's some alleged wrongdoing. I immediately am in conversation with Dr. Melendez, other members of the FACE team, to understand any concerns, any issues at all with the election process. We are very committed to running a successful election for this campaign season and continue to welcome all of your concerns and feedback. And also we'll be continuing to be in touch with all of you throughout the process to debrief at critical points so we can make immediate corrections to maintain the integrity of the election. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Now we have Kathy Brodsky, District 26.
Oh, the migrant situation.
Yeah,
sorry.
there was a part two. We may come back in a moment. I'm not sure if Melissa is on just yet.
I'm admitting her now.
Yes, please. Yeah, she has been leading that work for us and can give you a little bit of an update on where we are. Just let me know when she comes in. I don't know if I see her.
She's in, and she's admitted in. Let me see if she has audio connection. Yep, she can speak. She's unmuted.
Okay, Melissa, yeah, Mr. Silverman, if you would just raise that again, the piece around the asylum seekers.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. As briefly as possible. I know we're breathing a sigh of relief because it looked like a lot of migrants that were scheduled to arrive have not come, but I think, again, when the weather changes, I'm expecting that's going to change. We don't know how long the stay with the Supreme Court is going to last. We're seeing a lot of migrants in our district that's really taxing our resources. I was wondering if we can get an update on that.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. And you're absolutely right. We have seen a little bit of a decline in the number of families. But that being said, that number continues to fluctuate, and there is a possibility that we will see another increase in the near future. So, what we are doing is working really closely with our superintendents and school principals to identify where they need most support. The first piece is for us to identify schools that are reaching capacity where they have received a large influx. So, for example, in District 2, we know that a lot of our schools have reached capacity or are very close to reaching capacity. And so, working with the Superintendent Enrollment Office of Pupil Transportation to identify schools that maybe are not the zone school, but that are very close by. And if busing is required, making sure that those pieces are in place. I know many of you have heard of what is referred to as the HERC, and the HERC is an emergency center that is not associated with DHS. It is run by health and hospitals, and those sites originally, when they were designed for single adult males, were a more short-term solution. They are now, for the ones that are for families, the stays are indefinite. Why do I mention this? Because since those are not DHS shelters, the students still have the right to attend a school that is within that zone, which is District 2. But if they need busing, the busing works a little differently because since it's not DHS, we need to fill out a busing exception form. So making sure that we're working in close contact with the OPT, with superintendents, with enrollment to identify where seats are available, where we're reaching capacity, and then of course following up with principals and superintendents to identify who needs support, whether it's instructional. We did issue that the SAM, the additional money, $2,000 per student. If you had a student in temporary housing, more than six or more students in temporary housing since July 1st. This is super important because we need to remember that these students are in temporary housing. So first and foremost, under McKinney-Vento Act, they have the right to attend their zone schools, and this is why we need to work so closely with enrollment and ensure that we're identifying where we're reaching capacity and where there are seats available and how we can support all the schools. If there is a place where you believe extra support is needed, Mr. Silverman, please let me know and we can talk offline. I'll make sure you have my contact information.
Thanks, Melissa. I got time, I think, for one more question. I've got an interview they've had me set up for, and people are here. So I can probably stay in for one more, but the rest of our team and the folks, other deputies are here and can be helpful in any of these questions as well.
Okay, so as per our reading, I'm going to call on someone that has not spoken at all. So please do not get offended if I skip you. We're going to go to District 31, Lisa Augustine.
Hi, Chancellor. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year. I love that you are consistently encouraging parents to be involved and parent engagement, and your fourth pillar shows that you constantly bring it up. Your staff brings it up all the time, and I love that. And also your fifth priority says is redesign the system to be more inclusive and responsive for parents and families, et cetera, et cetera. I want to know how parents can feel included when there's still this vax mandate in effect. They cannot attend their children's shows. They cannot go to PTA meetings. They cannot come into the building for any reason. They feel alienated. I get phone calls all the time. Parents want to leave the DOE because of this in New York City and go to a private school or move out of state completely. Private schools or homeschooling. Is there any intention to do away with this mandate? Because how can you achieve your fourth pillar and this fifth priority if this is still in effect?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the question. And the reality for us is that decisions like that are made based upon the directives that are given to us by the Department of Health. The DOE doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like we're part of all the other city agencies, and when the directives go out, and those directives I don't think are meant to try to keep parents away from schools, but on balance, what they're saying is that the way we've been able to keep these schools and our numbers as solid as they have been are because we have in fact kept to all of these directives that have come in. And so ultimately, it's the mayor who makes the final decision on it but he takes the recommendation from the Department of Health, and then we are guided by it, and all city agencies are guided by it. I understand exactly what you're saying. I appreciate it. It's really not within my purview to say I can just change it and everybody can just show up even if you're not vaccinated. The
What
rationale.
about showing a negative test result, possibly to attend a meeting or a show for the children, even a graduation ceremony?
You know what? That's an interesting thing, right? So if you're saying, right, like they're not vaccinated, but have been able to show the negative test results, double back to you on that. That's an interesting point, and it's one that we should be considering instead of it being so final. If you are not vaccinated, but you can come in and show that you've got recent results that show you're fine, maybe we can in fact use something like that. I don't know. I don't want anybody to run to the press and say the chancellor just said we're going to change the rules. No, what I'm saying is that I appreciate very much the comment that you just raised. Kanita, you and your team, Deputy Chancellor Lloyd, please, let's make note of that. Let's double back. Let's have a meeting with Dr. Vassan, Department of Health. Let's raise this issue and see if there is a middle ground that we, in fact, might be able to hit in order to do this. So let me double back to you on it. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you raising that as well. I'm sorry that I do have to run everybody. These folks are all here now, but our team is still on. Have a great rest of the meeting and look forward to seeing you all soon. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Chancellor. Thank you for coming. So at this time, we do have 3 minutes in this section. So I had lowered Melissa's hand, District 27, by accident. You haven't spoken yet. So would you like to address, ask your question or comment?
Sure, yeah. My question is about the class size legislation and how the schools are going to be supported in lowering class sizes to 20 kids in elementary school, et cetera. And especially how that's going to happen for schools that have the dwindling enrollment and are being forced to access teachers. And also how that will work with, ICT classrooms when there are 2 teachers in the classroom.
They are writing down. I could see they actually noting their your question for you. So be patient. I'm gonna and if they can't answer it now, they will send the information. They've been very on point with that when we send them questions. I am going to ask Kathy, District 26, to pose her comment or question, and his team is taking notes.
Thank you, Shirley. I just wanted to again raise the issue with Gamma being inoperable. There is a so-called listening tour going on for feedback, but as I said on this platform before, it's this sort of that listening tour is implying that they want to change, tweak things and improve things, but it's still at a basic level inoperable. There is no real-time progress monitoring. There is no progress monitoring for students, parents. I put, I think in the chat, either last month or the month before, a whole list of things that are not operable, and that list has not changed. So there's great frustration from parents and students, especially in middle schools and high schools, that at a basic level, parents and students should be able to know their grades, and they are not able to know their grades because Gamma is not working. Also frustration that Google Classrooms is not mandated for every teacher to use in each classroom, and that parents are asking for that to be a mandated tool that teachers use. So right now, it just seems at a basic level, again, to reiterate, students work hard. They should know their grades. parents should know their grades and be able to engage in a meaningful way with teachers and staff. And again, this listening tour is really quite perplexing because it's just not working. And again, PTAs are having to think about paying for different platforms to use tens of thousands of dollars. So that is my comment and my frustration on behalf of my district, and I'm sure other districts in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I don't see if they're going to answer that question right now, but Andrea, please ask your question or comment. District 75. Andrea? We'll come back to Andrea. Rima?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to escalate a concern that I was hearing about students and Metro cards in high school, that students were advocating for their cards to work weekends and for them to have more rides on their Metro cards so that they can participate in extracurricular activities and whatnot. And also that the Harbor School needs free ferry rides. The Metro cards they can't use for the ferries, and like if they want to do after school or anything on Saturday, they incur that cost. So I just wanted to advocate to help the students with what they're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. So the team is going to answer the questions during their face updates because we're behind, and I don't think some of the questions they don't have the answer to. I am looking at they're writing notes down. So as we've got to give them time to get the answer, if they can answer it on this platform, or they will send the answers to those questions. So Andrea, are you able to unmute yourself and speak, or put it in the chat if you can't, if you're having tech issues? We are going to go to Adriana, and then Andrea we'll go back to Andrea, and that will be last for that section. Our next speaker is here and waiting.
Thank you, Shirley. I have a question for whoever is able to answer it. In our district, we have a lot of teachers and a lot of students who are consistently absent because of new COVID-19 infections. And I would like to know if there is a reason that the COVID-19 situation room was shuttered by the DOE.
Okay. And then we're going to go to Andrea. Thank you, Adriana, District 75. If not, Andrea, just please put your question in the chat. They are also monitoring the chat as well. There are 2 more YouTube questions in the chat as well. So I'm
Yes,
going to share
hello?
my...
Hello?
Oh, Andrea, go ahead, Andrea.
Did you call me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question. It was for the chancellor, but he left because he had to go. It was about the CT.
Go ahead.
Can I text it or email it or something? Because it's important.
No, you could state it, but you can also, in addition, put it in the chat as well.
I'll put it in the chat also after. But my question was initially for the chancellor or his cabinet, but it was really more for the chancellor. I wanted to ask her about the CTE program that's in a lot of these schools to prepare the students for the future, for the outside world. Are there going to be other programs like that? In this particular case, he had visited Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn just the other day. It was this week. And they have a wonderful program that I read about on Twitter. And I wanted to know if other schools are going to have that same type of program or something similar, depending on the type of students that's in the district, whether it be special needs kids, kids with disabilities, or the typical children.
Thank you, Andrea. We did touch on it a little bit with DC Quintana about the CT programs, and they're collaborating with the Office of Student Pathways, but that is, we definitely want more details regarding that. And so your question is noted.
Okay. I'll write in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to the slides. This was for Sharon Rensher. She is, if you didn't, she's the senior advisor for state and federal education policy. We will come back to the Office of FACE, and we thank you for their patience. Proposals. So we're going to have Nan Mead to talk about talk about financial aid, foundation aid, and proposal to create a commission to study foundation aid. And you see high schools in my mind, or should we replace the current foundation aid? So at this time, I am going to give the floor to Ms. Mead.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, good morning, everybody. CPAC. I see Jesse Mojica. I haven't seen you in a long time. Good to see you. I want to introduce myself. My name is Nan Mead. I am the Director of Outreach and Communications at the Center for Educational Equity. And just bear with me a hot minute. I'm going to share my screen with my little presentation here. And I will send this to the chairs after. But just to briefly introduce myself, I see some familiar faces, obviously. I know Jimmy Brown is here. She actually took my spot on CPAC from when I was on CPAC a number of years ago. So I'm a former CPAC board member. I'm a former President's Council president and a former CEC member. So I'm really thrilled to be back here. Most recently, I was the Manhattan Regent, as some of you know, but I always enjoy coming back to speak to the group at CPAC because I'm always so impressed with the way you folks are so dedicated, you know, to our students. So I'm gonna just dive right into it because I know you have a packed agenda. The center is the Center for Educational Equity at Teachers College. We're a policy and research center, and we work to guarantee that every child has a meaningful educational opportunity to graduate from high school, prepared for college, careers, and engage civic participation. We seek to pursue foundational change by using legal strategies, academic research, and also collective advocacy and collective action, like what we're doing today. We work to strengthen educational rights by promoting effective court orders, which we'll talk about in a bit, strong policies, improved investment in schooling, like funding, and informing stakeholders, of which you are a key body. So we believe that all schools should be well equipped to meet the needs of all our students, especially in underserved communities. I'm gonna go down one. No. Okay, there. Stop. So sorry, 1 second. Why won't this page turn? Oh, there, that's all I had to do. Okay. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is foundation aid. Foundation aid is the main component of funding for schools. I know that some folks have worked on or are very familiar with the Fair Student Funding Formula, which is specific to New York City. The monies that go into New York City's formula, a huge chunk of it actually comes from the state. And so the state funding that goes into New York City's formula comes from this formula called foundation aid. The formula was created in 2007 as the result of a very key piece of litigation called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity versus the State of New York. So if you've heard of it, but maybe you're not too familiar with it, I will give a brief history lesson for the newer folks. So the Campaign for Fiscal Equity was a lawsuit that was initiated by Michael Rebell. He's the founder and executive director of the Center for Educational Equity. He led a group of parents, New York City parents, in litigation against the state on fair funding for schools. Prior to that, education funding in New York State was largely a political exercise. It really had more to do with, which elected had more clout and power in his or her district. And as we've seen, certain areas of the city and state have been chronically underfunded prior to the creation of the formula. So in 2003, a major decision within that lawsuit came back and said that, that New York students are entitled to what we call a sound basic education under the New York State Constitution. And in order to provide that, New York needed an equitable funding formula. And so Foundation Aid is the name of the formula. It is primarily based on enrollment with additional add-ons to support the needs of students with disabilities, as well as English language learners, low-income students, and other categories. Now, because the Foundation Aid formula has been in place for 15 years, that's a very long time. A lot has changed. The economy has changed. The demographics of the state of New York have changed. One of the key components of the formula was a regional cost of living component. That has changed. So when we think about the ways in which our own student populations have shifted over time, there are higher poverty rates, more students living in temporary housing, more English language learners, particularly students, we call them SIFE, students with interrupted formal education. And that could mean, quite simply students who have never even been to school in their home language. Technology right now is playing a greater role in the educational process than it ever has. The COVID pandemic has obviously brought that to the fore in terms of what is needed. And we have a lot of, lingering concerns regarding what we're calling digital equity issues in terms of access to not only the Wi-Fi, but also devices. And those technology needs are key for all students, but especially for students with disabilities. So, for students who are on the autism spectrum, maybe use devices to support their educational needs, students with low vision, students who are deaf, et cetera. A key component also is that schools generally are providing more services to students than ever before in terms of food, in terms of healthcare, in terms of dental services. As more schools, embrace that community school wraparound service model, there are needs that are not accounted for in the formula as it's currently configured. And, candidly, we're in the middle of a mental health crisis. That is, there were mental health concerns going into the pandemic. The cause of death for adolescents was, second highest cause of death were related to mental health issues. And now it's an even greater need. The need to address pandemic-related learning loss is another key component that has also not been accounted for. There was an education hearing right before the holidays where the Assembly Education Committee, had a number of experts come in to talk about the ways in which students are really struggling or have struggled not only with, with the lasting effects of the pandemic, but also now that there has been a return to schools and dealing with, the post-pandemic losing caregivers, being resettled, loss of family income, et cetera. So all of that to say, the formula is totally outdated. We need to start over. We envision this would happen if a commission were appointed. We would expect that the state would initiate this appointment. It would comprise, and this is our proposal, the center's proposal, it would be composed of 15 members with appointees that would be split between the governor, legislative leadership, and the Board of Regents and the State Education Department. In terms of the kinds of folks we would envision sitting on this commission, we are really proponents of a very broad range of stakeholders be involved in this process. So parents, advocacy organizations, teachers, principals, superintendents, school business officials who are involved in the finances, even some folks who are teaching higher ed, but in particular, experts who serve high-need students, such as students with disabilities, those who are homeless, and English language learners. So what would this commission do? And by the way, we are, we are pushing this from the standpoint of urgency, right? So those of you who have been following kind of the payouts over the last couple of years into the foundation aid formula, there have been outstanding monies that have been owed. This coming fiscal year will be the last year of the back end of the monies that have been owed. So part of the rationale for this commission is, what do we do now? What do we do next? We want the commission to meet regularly to develop and propose a new student funding formula, completely starting from scratch. And we would expect that funding for this endeavor would enable the commission to, be able to hire staff, bring in experts in school finance. There are, other commissions like this around the country, Maryland, Illinois, to name a couple, where a dedicated commission has studied school financing and really look at the current trends, best educational practices in terms of what is happening right now, and come up with a formula that is reflective of current needs, current demographics, and current trends. These findings from the commission would be delivered to the governor, the legislature, and the Board of Regents. And then assuming that a new formula is adopted by the legislature, this group would continue in our proposal. This group would continue to meet regularly to monitor the implementation of the new formula and continue to meet even beyond the initial implementation and submit a new report every 2 years in perpetuity to ensure that there's equitable funding year in and year out. And so what am I asking my friends at CPAC? Keep your communities informed, contact your representatives, and stay tuned for updates from the center. I'm going to send these slides over to you along with the full proposal. In terms of the work that we've been doing at the center, Michael and I have been meeting with a number of legislators inside the Education Committee in particular, both in the Assembly as well as the Senate. We've spoken with folks within the DOE. I've had an opportunity to meet with a number of parent groups. I've talked to, my old President's Council, CB7 on the Upper West Side. I spoke to Naquan McLean last night, so I'm going to meet with Education Council Consortium in a couple of weeks, and I was just invited to meet with CEC3. So, we are trying to get the word out from a grassroots perspective because we think it's important for parents and other advocates to be aware really of the need for a new formula based on all the factors that I listed earlier, and that there really does need to be a path forward on what does education funding look like COVID, which has really, even more encouraged this urgency. So my contact information is here, and this will be part of what I send over to the chairs. And I'm going to stop there because I know you have a long packed agenda, and I will take questions.
Thank you. I don't see any raised hands or questions in the chat. Thank you, and I don't know if we said it, but Happy New Year, Nan.
Happy New Year to you.
I'm killing time to see if anybody has any questions, or because some of us like to type it in.
Right. Here, I'm copying this in the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna ask a question to help kill time.
Please.
The DOE had a FSF working task force. Did you study those proposals, recommendations from the Fair
a little
Student,
bit. Well, what's interesting, so Fair Student Funding is a little bit different. I mean, it's conceptually very similar, but the levers are slightly different. so for example, the baseline amount to schools, that 225,000 or whatever, that doesn't map over to foundation aid. But I would say that, again, conceptually, like we're coming out of, a really a seismic shift in education, because the whole world has changed, right? I mean, coming out of this pandemic, the entire world has changed. We can say we're going back to normal, and in some ways I think we're trying to do that, but life has changed for a lot of people, and education is going to look very different going forward, particularly in light of those technological needs that have come up. So we're talking with some of those folks, because I think we do have, some interests in common with the folks who are pushing for change in fair student funding. And my understanding and talking to them is that, they did this task force, but what's the next step in the process, right? They want to see a formula as well that is reflective of what is happening today. So we will continue to have those touch points as we move forward.
Well, thank you, because I wanted to, because I know some have questions on foundation, the difference between foundation aid and the fair student funding, and they have like similar goals, right? But based on different things.
Yes.
There's a question from YouTube. Since we don't have any questions from membership, we're going to ask this question, and then we're going to thank you for your time. Will there be a list of what is defined as special need?
So that's interesting. I mean, in terms of students with disabilities, or in terms of special needs as a catch-all. I mean, we kind of use special needs as a catch-all to include students with disabilities, so students who either have an IEP or 504, students who are English language learners, students with a diagnosed mental health issue that requires support, students who are low income, based on their qualifications for public services. And I think, one of the things that we would like to have considered is a separate lever for homeless, because that is not necessarily accounted for in the current formula, even though obviously there's a lot of overlap between low-income students and students who are homeless. We would make the argument that is additional need beyond just a sort of catch-all for low income.
Thank you, Nat, because I was going to ask you, is there a section for students in temporary housing? You have students in temporary housing, not necessarily in a homeless shelter as well. Will that cover those students as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think it's something that clearly the commission would have to address and think about. But we recognize that students with special needs encompass a wide range of students, right? It's not beyond a handful of slim categories, especially in light of the pandemic. Go ahead.
So we actually had a clarification on that question from YouTube. They said years ago, talented and gifted was considered a special need. That has changed over the years.
In the current formula, so we don't map over the way on the gifted and talented piece, the way fair student formula does. So there isn't a lever for gifted and talented. That's a local issue.
Okay. And Adriana put it on the chat, and this is going to be the last question or comment. It says, interesting that this is coming up related to COVID. Is there any talk about changing the policy requiring official diagnosis to initiate the IEP process?
Not as part of our proposal. And I certainly wouldn't want to get in front of anything that the Board of Regents is thinking about or talking about. because COVID-19 has been a severe disabling event. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. And I think that, folks who are interested in that should ask those questions. We had not, I'm actually going to write that down. But thank you for bringing it up, because I think that is a perfect example of why this commission needs to happen.
Well, thank you. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Thank you for keeping us informed and the invitation that this is another way we can advocate for our students, because budget funding has been a very big topic since the beginning of the school year, both on the state and city level, right? So thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Same here. So I'm going to share my screen again. And before we give the floor to Face, because some of it will intertwine with what we were talking about. So before we go about President's Council budget, January 15th, please remind your membership that, and those President's Council who actually have a bank account, the interim financial report is due. This can be a teaching point at your meeting for the President's Council, and you share, and if you have a bank account, to share your interim financial report and show membership what needs to be done, what needs to be filled, and how it should be done. Just been touched on. I know Face is going to touch on it even more. The citywide Community Education Council elections are upon us, and we want to thank all membership for securing their candidate forum dates. We sent the date for all 38 President's Council to you this week. You also received the election guide, and you also received the unofficial 2023 the CCEC toolkit. Please give feedback on that, and Face will finalize it. And once it finalizes it, it will be shared. And please share it with your membership, share it with your school communities, share the election guide with your school communities, have these conversations at your PAPTA and President's Council about this citywide Community Education Council, which we are in partnership with them. We hold the candidate forums. We are to meet, help fill vacancies. So this strengthening up those partnerships as we go. We're going to elaborate on CEC election working group through Face. If Aisha has something to add in that, she can add to it. We also mentioned that the CEP template meeting is this afternoon. I'm going to go real quick, just look at the screen. We asked for the schedules from our committees. Most of them had give us dates. There's like only 3 who haven't given us dates. So the next capacity building is January 23rd. Communications is January 17th. High school gave their entire schedule for till June. So they had one last week Friday. The next one is February 3rd. The legislative committees also meeting on January 23rd. And the Title I is going to have their meeting January 24th and March 21st. And remember, all to sign up is there, all resources, especially regarding PAPTAs and President's Councils. All the guides, resources are on our website. We also have the DOE's website, who also have additional resources to support our parent association and our parent teacher association. And at this time, we are going to give the floor to Face. I'm going to turn it back to our Executive Director of Face, Dr. Christina Melendez.
We started this morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for just committing your time to these conversations and bringing up concerns from your districts that are powerful and important for us to keep an eye on. And of course, doing my very best to, as your co-chair stated, answer or get back to you if I cannot answer some of these questions or concerns. So first, I want to just reiterate for the very last time today the importance of our CEC elections and the launch of them, right? January 9th, we launched these elections. We are closing the application process on February 13th. So if you know someone, if you yourself are interested in running for CEC, please do so. It's not a long application process. They promised me it's 5 to 10 minutes tops. I think it's also essential that we are very clear about what goes on at the CEC, that we understand what's happening. And so if I trust that you all have an understanding of what's happening at our CEC meetings, but if folks that are interested and are around you do not know, we ask that you go to our website, look up your district and see what dates and times your CECs are having meetings so that folks can get a feel of what's going on, so that they know what they're getting into and what it means to be a CEC council member. Also, just, I think the part that goes hand in hand with CEC elections is our NICSA accounts, right? And so we have a lot of schools that are not at 100%. We are doing all we can from where we are to ensure that FLCs, FSCs, PCs understand the importance of having a NICSA account, because it is the only way to apply to vote on the CEC in the CEC election. Sorry, and so we want to make sure that everyone understands, has access, and doesn't wait to the very last second to do that, because it'll make it tricky for them to be able to vote. And in order to sign up, they're going to need some information from their schools. So we want to make sure that everyone gets that up and going before it's voting season. Additionally, we have some PC trainings that we are running monthly. Our next one is January 18th. I am only sharing that because I want you to know that there is this commitment to building capacity at the district level and with our FLCs and FSCs, but also trying to do our very best to get to our schools through our parent coordinators. So that happens. It's an hour every month that we commit to that with our teams here at FACE. Town halls continue to take hold. If you are up and coming, we are excited. I know we're excited to visit District 30, although virtual. And we have a couple more coming up. So we're excited to come to your communities and meet with you and get a feel for you all in your spaces. I know that there was a lot of conversation earlier on around getting those emails. Every PA and PTA has a schools account issued to them, and those are, they do, some of them don't. Unless you're a very brand new school with not a DBN, you have a schools account. And so we ask and urge every PA and PTA to use that account because that is the account that everyone can have access to. What we understand and know, and maybe some of the frustration from your end, is that some PAs and PTAs don't use the account for many different reasons. They have issues logging in, they have they don't have supports. And so we're doing our very best to help the PCs, to help from our end, make sure to help our FLCs, make sure that they can have access. So if there is a PA or PTA that doesn't have access to their school's account, please feel free to raise that up or to have them tell their PC to call on us to help them get access, because we know that that might be the issue. The other issue is that some of them are using their own personal accounts, which makes it tricky because we cannot, whether we have access to it or not in our databases, cannot share your personal accounts with other families or parent leaders. So that's why we used our schools. We issue our PAs and PTAs the schools account. So let's try and leverage that, and happy to support our PCs and FLCs to continue to encourage our PAs to use those accounts. And if they have trouble entering those spaces, that we want to support them. And then we had a couple of questions around, again, the concerns around gamma. So last time we had a conversation about gamma, and I did find Randy Asher, who's doing a lot of the work and supporting that team at DIIT in helping gather the information from the parent space and the school space to share with DIIT. And so I think it'd be really powerful or helpful, co-chairs, if you invited Randy to your platform or created a space where Randy could have a conversation with all of you so he can hear firsthand some of the things that are real and happening in your districts. So that's one thing that Randy is more than happy to do whenever invited. He's happy to do, they're doing in this space or in just a focus space outside of your monthly meetings. I am going to follow up with D75 and the CT specific questions. We did receive, the Chancellor acknowledged the D79 letter. And so we are following up with the superintendent of D79 to share some of your wonderful recommendations around that space and adult learning and parents having access to some of that information and some of the recommendations you have around the website. So thank you for that letter. I know it was from the past, but it's still very real and powerful right now. And so we're going to share that with our superintendent and see and have a response for you. I'm definitely forwarding your D17's lunch concerns to Chris so that he can also continue to have those conversations and think through the class size legislation. The cabinet is really thinking about how to implement that, and having a working group is an idea that's being talked about and thought about with the Chancellor's cabinet. The moment that they outline sort of the expectations around that working group, I will definitely share it with you. So that's up and coming. The situation room question, I'm gathering some answers, but there was a move away from the situation room specifically because the Chancellor created a new Office of Emergency Planning and Response. And so some of that work lies there. I want to get further detailed information about what that means and how they're handling it so that I can forward it to all of you as well. And Jesse, any other updates? The Metro card, Rima, I'm going to follow up with that as also and get back to you. Jesse, is there anything I'm missing around our office?
Just wanted to, and good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to also mention, Christina, I know that you put the election website in the chat, that we are also, as part of our outreach, having daily information sessions. One of the goals for this year is for us to really increase our outreach on the campaign and give detailed information on the process. So to really encourage greater participation. Rosa, I saw your comment in the chat. Thank you so much. Those I know that a few of our liaisons have also spoken to their councils, but we're having daily information sessions leading through the entire application process. So Christina included the link to the election website in the chat, and if you follow that link, you'll get the daily schedule and links to those respective information sessions.
Yeah, and the team at FACE is today we were all trained on the presentation. So we're happy if you all gather your families, parent leaders, parents, and want to invite us to lead a conversation around the CEC elections. I'm going to send over a link for sign up very soon. So feel free to invite us, and someone from our team will show up to your parent meeting and share some of the ways to get involved, what a CEC is in more detail, so that families can feel like they have information to either apply or or vote or share with others that are ready to do that.
Christina, there's a comment from the chat based on your statements made on the PAPTA emails. This also apply for President's Council because they have DOE emails as well. Face at first at the beginning of the pandemic or in the middle of the pandemic, did give training from actually it was from DIIT in collaboration on how to access Zoom and the DOE email and how to change the password and security. Can we have a
refresher?
More refreshers, more PDs because there's a lot of parent leaders, which is a good thing, that are new, and not all of us are tech savvy. So we are requesting, and that's a good suggestion, and thank you, to do refreshers. We need refreshers on almost everything, but we need refreshers on tech, right? Using the tech, because not everybody's tech savvy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think this and others, as they come up, happy to create a menu or a list or a series of these professional developments as you co-chair see fit. So definitely forward those needs to us. We also want to be very, very intentional about building capacity on the ground. So we want your FLCs and your PCs to have an understanding of how to do these things as well, because we are so far away from our local communities that we want to make sure that you have someone on the ground when your email messes up that can troubleshoot at least with you. Most of the times that's enough. And sometimes you need someone to reset the whole thing, and we know those things happen sometimes, and that's probably where they can elevate that to us, or you can elevate that to us. But we want to make sure that folks know who to elevate it to, that you have what you need, that they have what they need to support you, so that we can get you up and running as soon as possible. So absolutely, this and others, just let us know and we're happy to provide.
Thank you. Membership, this is your opportunity to ask questions. We could continue that President's Council conversation here. We have all three topics executive of that department on our platform. Take advantage of the opportunity to address concerns, and I just want to be mindful of this is a public platform, so be mindful on how you phrase or ask certain questions, as in giving details, just details of identities and etc. Thank you. I don't see any questions. Okay, so Rosa put a question in the chat. I think the presentation regarding the CEC, let's not forget our citywide Community Education Council elections. If you do presentations to PAPTA, I think this would be really great to do at President's Councils, since they hold the candidate forum, and then you have all the schools at that meeting, which the PAPTA presidents can relay the information. And this is part of developing leaders, parent leaders developing other parent leaders. So doing it at President's Council, and then President's Council's responsibility to share that information with their schools. So this is how it reaches the boot on the ground. I'm going to stop yapping because Leonard, you want to say something?
Yeah,
but then Leonard has his hands up.
Absolutely, Leonard, I want to get to you just 1 second. I want to say that yes, Rosa, but more importantly, all of you. That is why we got our whole FACE team trained, so that once we give you this link, you can sign up, send us dates, whoever is available on our team to present that conversation in your space. That is what we want to do. As Jesse said, we are committed to doing some outreach to helping folks on the ground understand all they need to know around these elections. So you are definitely a bridge to that, to all of the families in all of the schools. So whatever we can do, however you can sign us up, we're happy to sign up. go and share. So whether in person or virtual, happy to do that. So thank you, Shirley, and thank all of you in advance for signing up for some info sessions. Leonard, sorry.
Sure. So thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on some of the discussions that we had with Chancellor Banks. So I just want to, again, make sure that if there are situations where we feel, let's say behind the scenes, I certainly won't mention any names, Shirley, don't worry. If we feel that there are situations where UFT individuals or UFT chapter chair people are taking positions, certainly with regard to CC elections, if we can, how to bring that to your attention. And again, this is all about people staying in their lane. That's what we're concerned about. So what do you recommend? What would you suggest?
I mean, we have clear guidelines around our CEC elections. They're also on that website under guidelines, right? And part of that is to your point, to ensure that everyone has equal opportunity to the space and the elections. And so that said, Leonard, please feel free to email either the FACE inbox, just because that's an easy, like, memorable space to just face@schools.nyc.gov. We always check that. We have someone manning that email box all the time. So it's not something that's going to get lost. And then, of course, you can CC Jesse and myself, and we're more than happy to continue and read into those. Sorry,
Dr. Melendez, if I can, I just want to say one complaint that I've heard. I personally do not have this complaint, but one complaint I've heard when it comes to FACE is sometimes people do make complaints, and they kind of, by the time there's a response, the problem has already been solved. It's already been resolved because it's so much time has passed. Whatever the process for, either making a complaint or filing an allegation of a violation, and when you go to get, when someone brings it to FACE, so much time goes by, it's no longer an issue. Now that may be, I'm kind of being funny about it, but so in this particular case, when you have a situation where you might have an alleged violation, an election coming up, I just want to make sure that someone will look into these sooner rather than later if there are issues that are raised. I'm not saying there even will be, but
no, I hear you, Leonard. I think that this is also not something I'm privy to, right? This is my first election or my first go around to the election. What I've heard about this concern in the past, it's that they required investigation. Like, it's tricky to just adjudicate around something that you heard, right? So you have to investigate these situations, and they take time, in all fairness to everyone that's sort of being alleged to be either in a violation of the guidelines or not. These things have to be investigated, evidence, there has to be some concrete evidence to support this work. And so it's just hard. And so I guess one of the things that we're thinking about as we start the process is just that. What is making sure that when complaints are placed, that the proper evidence is, the supportive evidence is there, so that we can at least expedite some of the investigations. But again, it all depends on the complaint or the allegation, and then there needs to be an investigation, which is a process depending on what it is. But we're privy to it. We've heard about it. The team has experienced this before. They
not
feel
just on
the
election,
same
but on
way.
any issues. Yeah, I'm just.
They feel the same way. I think other issues that just come to face are around our D210 chancellor's regulation, and we are in the process of hiring an ECO, and so some of those things are really just around, like, we're waiting for the person that's there. We've interviewed, we're in the process. We just have to wait a little bit for some approvals. But once that's done, then that'll also be expedited. But I hear you.
One suggestion I might have is if someone could follow up, like if there was even a website. So like when you file a complaint on 311 or 311, I believe they give you a number and you can kind of follow up and see what happens to it.
Yeah,
that would be great. I mean, I'm sure I'm the subject of who knows how many D10 complaints. I mean, but whatever it is, it's funny. There are things that go in there, and and you don't even know like what the status is, or what you hear that, well, nobody ever responded to anybody. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. So something where somebody could get some sort of feedback would be great, even if it just says we're still working on it.
Right. Many of them have been responded to in that way. Some of them, but I hear you, Leonard. I think we just had that conversation around like we need to assign a number to our spreadsheet logs so that everyone feels like it is somewhere. But be rest assured it is somewhere and it's being logged. And as soon as the person walks into that space, they have a list of things that they need to address, and also build out the protocols in a more concrete, transparent way. Thank you, Leonard.
Thank you. Bear with me, Celia. I see your hand. This question was asked like 3 times. This is from YouTube, but just bear with me because I think it's very important because this questions come out off camera all the time. Why has CEC been appointed to sit in on interview for parent coordinator?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump in, and then I'm gonna let Christina answer. So we had conversations with the state and assembly, state with senators, and this is state law. So whether it's incorrect or not, DOE sees it. DOE is having conversations. DOE is planning to eventually, which should be done because some schools are already doing it. It should be involved at the SLT or at minimum the PAPTA in these conversations, right? Regarding the parent coordinator, because parent coordinator is the direct support for PAPTAs and the Title I PACs at the school levels. Parent coordinators usually don't deal with the CECs. Usually it's the FLCs, right? FLCs, and let's not forget our family support coordinators, that level. But regardless of that state law, other people are being engaged in that parent coordinator interview because it's very important for the school community to engage in those conversations because every school has specific needs. And it's state law right now. It's state law. Whether it's going to change or not, but that's why they are there. And conversations that they had, and I'm not going to go into details on the screen, that they put it in state law from hearing from constituents, and that's how it made it to that amendment there. I don't know if Christina wants to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of CECs were very surprised by the fact that they are now part of the interview process for parent coordinators. A lot of PCs that were in the process of being hired earlier on this year, CECs were very much interested in speaking with the PAs and PTAs at that school to understand where they wanted and who they wanted, because they realized that they're not very intimately connected to that space unless, of course, their child went there. So I've heard a lot of CECs be surprised, and I've heard a lot of CECs work in collaboration with the parent leaders at the school to work together to make that recommendation. So that's what I understand happened in the action. But like you said, Shirley, it's a state law. This is what happened this go around, and they charged the CECs with owning that space. So that's not a New York City Public Schools thing. That just happens to be something we have to support our CECs in doing, and our DSL teams.
Yes, and the senators said it's a request for invitation. The CEC don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's a request. The law is to invite them, right? They could decline if they so choose to. So that they made that very clear. If you look at the law, they're not mandated to do it, but the school or the district must extend an invitation to them to be part of that consultation.
Yeah.
And on that note, Oh, go ahead, Christina.
Just
Then
to
I'm gonna
just
give the
to
floor to Christina.
just to Kathy's point, we did encourage them to meet with our parent leaders on the ground. But more importantly, I think that, and the more powerful thing is that a lot of the CECs themselves took the initiative to meet with the parent leaders on the ground, and so they've decided that this is really the way to go. So I'm excited to see the collaboration across parent leadership structures and parent leaders in our city. So it's been interesting and great.
So Celia, thank you for being patient. District 13, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Auburn. Good afternoon. My question is around council, I guess the information sessions that are going to happen for the CEC and citywide elections. And I'm hoping two things happen. One, that it goes back to orientation and a certain amount of trainings being mandatory for especially for CEC members in general and for citywide members as well, not just the CEC. I also hope that, because there's a lot of confusion, I think, on a lot of everything this year, as always, because some people know some things, some people don't know other things, but if everybody gets the information at the same time, I think it makes for a better working environment. Two, I think an issue that has come up because we were virtual in the last election. I think a lot of members, actual council members, feel that it's always going to be virtual. So even when you have hybrid meetings, only certain members tend to show up. And again, it's going to vary from council to council, but I would love to find out if even when you have hybrid meetings, if the members are supposed to show up, because if you don't have members showing up, you're not making quorum. And it inhibits the work of the council if you cannot make quorum. And now that there's going to be this extra seat on CCs 1 through 32 for the B75, quorum is going to go up for each council. So now quorum as of next time is going to be 7 and not 6. And it's going to be more difficult to get people to come. So I think in the information sessions, it would be nice to say, yes, you might be able to have a virtual meeting, or there may be a reason that the council has a virtual meeting. But if you have hybrid meetings, you still need the council members, I'm talking about the audience, the council members to at least show up in person. We've had hybrid meetings and other things, and sometimes it's just 1 or 2 council members that show up in person. So it would be nice to know that it's not, tell people in advance, meaning people that are running, that everything is not virtual, and there might be a time where this extension ends. And people may have to actually show up in person. It would be nice. So, but if nobody knows that and no one enforces that, it's going to continue to be the same cycle.
Yeah. Thank you, Celia, for that. I think that's that's a very powerful thing to add to our presentation for sure. And then I want to say that we have heard a lot of our parent leaders share with us that participation in your meetings has increased because of the virtual options. And so we are also really working with our legislators to share that interest in making amendments to the OML laws. So both ends. But thank you, Celia. I'm definitely gonna bring that back to the team and figure out a ways to add that to the presentation, because that's a very important point to make early on.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melendez.
So thank you, everyone. I don't see any further hands or no other comments. I just know that I just want to highlight that again in the beginning when we were talking about President's Council. Some of our President's Council are having difficulty of knowing who their members are and their contact information, which is not being provided by the district. So please, could you, I know from your end, to work on it, to remind our support, our partner, our family leadership coordinators, and family support coordinator, usually they're in charge of supporting the President's Councils to give vital information. So President's Council can do their role and responsibility that they were charged to do, were elected to do, is to support the PAPTAs in their schools. And in order to do that, they need to know who their membership are and have direct contact to them, to their membership. So I'm looking forward to hearing by next month that everyone is on the same page in regarding on President's Council's membership. It's a little more difficult for high schools, and high school has more than one district teams. And so it's important that the FLCs collaborate with those lists as well. So regardless of which family leadership coordinator or family support coordinator we go to, we have the information on who our members are. And that's my statement into contribution for that. Any other questions before I put back the slide so we can go into adjournment or comments? It doesn't have to be questions or suggestions. Okay, so I'm going to share my slides. We actually at 12:30 now. And I want to thank Jesse, Christina, for always being patient, being here from beginning to end with us. And we are very much appreciative in answering our questions or getting back to us. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 9th, which is also going to be a PAC meeting. And on Monday, we are going to celebrate and reflect on Martin Luther King. So happy Martin Luther King, and reflect what he stands for, how it applies to us. And I use this quote: "The time is always right to do the right thing." And Lunar New Year is in January. I believe it's the 22nd. So happy Chinese Lunar New Year to those who celebrate the Lunar New Year. So again, thank you very much and Happy New Year. And please, the only way we can help each other, and again, CPAC is all 38 members. Please engage, ask us questions, tell us what you need, answer the questionnaires, because a lot of these questions can be answered beforehand so they can prepare to, they'll have the answers ready on this platform. So we don't have to wait for the answers for questions. So a lot of these questions, I know there's questions on the spot because you don't know what the presentation is going to say, but these questions, especially concerning what's going on in our district, borough, citywide, please send them in so they can be prepared to answer these questions. Thank you. So Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm going to stop the recording.